you miss me? I've been out of it comatose, but the depression is over.
Hello and welcome to Controlled Burns, the weekly hobbylist podcast from me, SlowBurne from Wildfire Gaming. And once again, joining me this week is my wife, Reagan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Over the last several weeks, we've been going through and discussing the seasons of Game of Thrones, and we're going to continue this week with season 4, which I think is unquestionably probably the best season we've discussed so far. So we'll see if Reagan agrees.
I know a person or two that would question it, but
Really?
we'll see.
Of season 4 being the best of the first 4?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of diehard book fans think it just goes downhill the more we deviate, and we're definitely deviating more.
Well, I don't know about that, but I guess if you are a hardcore book fan or you want to discuss our findings and opinions and theories from the series, you can write into the podcast at controlledburnes with an es at gmail.com. Okay, so we're going to follow a similar structure to what we've done the last couple weeks where we go through the episodes. I'm going to have my top moments. I'm going to rank the episodes, and then we're going to discuss the dead characters, which that number did grow significantly in season 4. And I also do have more standout moments in season 4, I think, compared to 2 and 3.
Okay, let's talk spoilers real quick. Please label your emails with spoilers if it's anything past the first quarter of Storm of Swords, and I will screen it for Andrew. I'd love to hear your theories. Also, for these episodes, we won't spoil past the season we're talking about, and I won't spoil anything for the books at all for this point. Anything past what Andrew's read, of course.
Okay. So the first episode of season 4 is called Two Swords, and we get the namesake right away because it is Tywin overseeing the forging of two new swords from the remains of ice, which was Ned Stark's sword. Somehow we think Rob had it, and then after he was killed, it was sent to him, or it's possible that they got it whenever Ned was killed. Who knows? But they've had the sword and they melted down. It's unnebulous how they got it. And so he gives one of them to Jaime, the new swords. But unfortunately, Jaime ruins the moment for him because he refuses to do what he wants and return to Castle Rock. And so, scene that starts with him giving him this new family sword ends with Tywin just disowning him.
Yeah, very pragmatic of Tywin, though, in character for him to split it from one massive sword into two
Yeah, he says the
reasonable
original
swords.
sword was abnormally large, or something unreasonably large, or something like that. So then we have Tyrion, Podrick, and Bronn, and they are awaiting the arrival. I guess they think it's going to be Oberyn's brother, right? Or that's who was invited.
Yes.
I don't know if they knew they'd figured out that it wasn't going to be him, but it is in fact Oberyn Martell instead that's showing up.
Yes,
But
they thought
they,
it was going to be Prince Doran, but he has gout and he wasn't going anywhere.
yeah,
He's more reasonable and less outwardly lusting for vengeance
yes, and
than
so
Oberyn is.
yeah,
So
Oberyn
this is bad
shows up.
news.
Oberyn shows. They actually miss him. He's already like gotten into the city, so he's in Littlefinger's brothel. And he's making it very clear he swings both ways while he's in there. And then he gets into a discussion with some Lannister men that ends with him stabbing the shit out of one of them. Right as Tyrion walks in.
His lady's cool with that too.
Mhm.
They've got an open relationship as long as they're included.
Yes. And
And of
so,
course, it is the incredible Pedro Pascal that plays Oberyn.
right.
He is so likable. It's brilliant. Very excited to have him introduced to the show.
Yeah, and he makes it clear that he has not forgiven the Lannisters for the murder and rape of his sister Elia, who was married to Rhaegar.
Yes. And the murder of
And
her
particularly,
children.
he holds the Mountain who did it and Tywin who he thinks ordered it the most guilty. So
Yes.
he tells, I think that scene ends with him telling Tyrion, "Go tell your father I'm here," basically.
Yeah. He's not particularly fond of any Lannisters.
No. And then we go to Daenerys. She seems to be losing control of her dragons a little bit in this scene. And they're chowing down on something. One of them, I think it's Drogon, kind of snaps on her. And then it's basically a waste of time here because they're just sort of reintroducing everybody. We get to introduce us to the new and maybe not so improved Dario Naharis.
Yeah.
Nothing really happens other than that. They're like, here's all these characters are back again.
I'm not a huge Dario fan anyway, but this one is definitely worse. Sorry, dude.
Yeah. Then we get Tyrion. Sansa's very upset. So Tyrion finds Sansa. She just won't eat. She's still mourning her dead brother and mother.
Fair.
and he doesn't really nothing he can really do about that right now. So then he visits Shay, and he is actually got to the point where he can't get it up for her anymore. And so she is upset. She's like saying that he's trying to ship her away. And then at the end of that scene, we see a handmaiden who is like overheard it.
Yes.
That's a problem.
He's going to report back to Cersei.
And so, but meanwhile, Cersei is hitting it off with Qyburn. But there's like kind of a scene where it's just kind of clear that things aren't really the same between her and Jaime, even though he's back. Because that's like kind of the cliffhanger last time is he's back.
Well, now he's all flawed. And
He's flawed, and it's been a long time. And
he's less like her now, and she's a narcissist. And so-
yeah. Then up in the north, we get the I would argue overlong and over dramatic debut of the Thins. They don't really do anything except for it's revealed they're cannibals. Get the idea.
Yeah, no one likes thins.
Yeah. And then we get John, who is he's mourning Rob, but he's tougher about it, so he's just kind of like a short little scene where he's talking about it with Sam. But what he's really getting ready for is his sort of a trial, I guess, where it's Sir Alistair and the other guys at the wall investigating his activities when he was with the wildlings. And so he admits to killing Cord in Halfhand and having sex with Egret.
Which would be breaking his oath, except
Janos Slynt calls for his death over this. But then John kind of gives a detailed report of Mance's army and their plans and everything. And Mace Raymond is like sitting up there, so he just basically lets him off.
yeah. Well, and of course he was told to do whatever it took to convince them
Sure.
that he was with them by Corin Halfhand, of course.
Right. So then it's Olenna meeting Brienne of Tarth.
Oh my
He's very
goodness.
impressed with her.
Who wouldn't be? A meeting of, I mean, definitely two of the top three characters, I think.
Yeah, in your warped mind. She
I
tells
see you.
she basically is just reporting back that it was Renly or Renly was killed by Stannis' shadow. She keeps talking about. She
Yes.
tells Olenna about it firsthand. We get like kind of a throwaway scene where Joffrey's insulting Jaime about how few things he has in the book. I guess it's sort of introduced in the book.
Yeah.
Of
That'll-
what is it? Is it just the captains or the Lord Commanders or whatever that are in the book? Or is it all the King's Guard?
That's a good question. I think it's just Lord Commanders, but
Okay.
I could be wrong.
And then we have Dara and Naharis hitting on Daenerys some more. And then they come upon a crucified girl on the way to, I guess they're going to Marine here.
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah. And then Brienne.
Unless it's young guy. I don't remember where we are.
No, that's earlier.
Okay.
I think. Brienne confronts Jaime, and she's basically telling him that he has an oath to keep Catelyn girl safe. And I think it's kind of unclear what he's going to do about that, or if he cares about that oath anymore. We have what seems like a pretty random scene where it's just Ser Dantos from season 2, who's not a recurring character like he is in the book, giving Sansa a necklace. We're just like, okay,
Yeah.
she's supposed to wear it to the wedding.
He says it's his dead mother's or something, and it would just mean the world to him.
Sure. And then we go to the Hound, and he's taking Arya to Lysa Arryn as a backup because obviously his original plan was to take her to her mother, but she was killed when they arrived. So they come to an inn where Lannister men are staying, and while they're there, I think it's Polliver is the one that stole Needle. He still has it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Arya is just like, well, we're going in, and the Hound isn't interested, but like she just doesn't ask for permission. She's just already walking up there, so he's like, oh crap. So he goes up there, and it's kind of a long scene, but
The Hound's recognized.
yeah, of course. And they sit down in there, and they're Lannister men, so they're like, oh great, the Hound's here. You gotta travel with us and everything, and anyway, it ends up with all of them being killed.
Yeah.
We might talk about that more in depth a little later. That's in that episode, and Sansa or Arya rather, getting her sword back. The second episode is called The Lion and the Rose. And it starts with Ramsay going on a hunt with Miranda and Reek.
Now, I believe this is the last one that George wrote, right?
Oh, is that right?
I think so.
I wasn't paying attention to
It's
that.
definitely the season, and I think it's The Lion and the Rose.
Okay. So they're going on a hunt. They're hunting some Longrel. I guess maybe it's supposed to be the one that was the other one that was in the Theon scene where he gets his dick chopped off.
Yes, I think it is.
Well, didn't work out for her very well. Then we have Jamie telling Tyrion that he's just not as good with his left hand. He's just a shell of his former self. So Tyrion says he should train with Bronn. So they start training, beginning of that relationship.
Yep.
Roose Bolton returns home to Dreadfort, I guess, and it's the first time that he's been back since he's been out with Robb and his army. So he's just now kind of seeing what Ramsay has done with Theon. And at first he's pretty pissed off about this because he's like, we needed him whole or whatever. But then there's kind of like this power scene where Ramsay sort of demonstrates his loyalty to him by having him shave him while he's telling him that they killed Robb.
And as a viewer, you're just screaming like, "Slit his throat! You're so close."
But he doesn't.
He doesn't.
And so, Roose Bolton notices that as well. So he tells Ramsay that if you can get Moat Cailin for me, maybe I'll reconsider your position.
Yes. He is highly motivated.
So then Tyrion gets the bad news from Varys, who's kind of doing him a solid here, and he says Tywin knows about Shay, so might want to get her out of here.
Yeah.
And
he was explicitly told not to bring her.
Tyrion's like, well, you should just lie for me. And he's like, I won't be doing that. So, and then it cuts to I guess it's sort of a, what do you call it right before you get wedding or married? When you have the meal?
Rehearsal dinner?
I don't know if they're rehearsing anything, but they're all having a meal together anyway. And this is where they're like giving Joffrey gifts and whatnot. And during this, like Cersei's sitting to Tywin, and she points Shay out to him, and so he definitely knows. And then Tywin also gives Joffrey the other sword, which he uses to chop open a book that Tyrion had gotten him. And so,
I think this is the reception. Like after the.
No, it's not. It's before.
Okay.
Obviously, it's before the wedding. He wouldn't be there for the reception.
Well, they get married and then.
This is before they get married.
Okay.
And then Tyrion, like, he just has to. He realizes like it's now or never, so he just has to. He shatters Shay's heart, sends her away.
Yeah.
It's very devastating for her, I guess. So that is pre-wedding. And then we also have Stannis who's getting reintroduced here. He's burning some people. And one of them is Selyse's brother, his wife. And so there's kind of like another sort of awkward dinner scene with them. And Selyse's kind of talking about how she's fearful for Shireen's soul. And she tells Melisandre to visit her.
Yeah, she's not worried at all about her brother. She's
no.
all
well, she might a
Lord
little.
of Light stuff.
It does kind of zoom in on her. But she's very bought in on the.
She's at least not vocally.
Right, yeah, definitely not vocally, yes. And so there is like a scene where Melisandre visits Shireen, but she doesn't really say anything of consequence.
Also, how dare she? Shireen is a perfect angel, and if anyone has a clean soul in this show.
Yeah. Then we get maybe the worst scene this entire season where we get some more boring Bran dreams, and then they're actually telling him that he's dreaming too much now, which is probably true. And Mira tells Bran that if they lose him, they lose everything. So he's got to be careful.
Wouldn't want that.
Truly awful stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's, really caught up, and it's way better to be a wolf than a boy on the road.
Yeah, especially with traveling companions like them. And then the big finale for this season, this episode is in fact the Purple Wedding. So it's like,
oh, so good.
There's a lot of good stuff going on there. Ultimately, the big thing that everybody remembers is Joffrey getting poisoned to death. But there's like some good stuff before that too, where Oberyn's there and he like kind of crosses paths with Tywin for the first time, and there's some tension. And then there's like some tension between Cersei and Brienne, because she's like kind of picking up on Brienne having a thing for him, and Joffrey's just being a complete ass, like just maximum.
Oh, so bad.
Maximum heel behavior.
The thing with the dwarves.
Yeah, it had the stupid dwarves.
Painful. But overall, I mean, this scene is one of my top ones of the whole show.
Is it?
I love the Purple Wedding.
Well, obviously it'll be on my list of scenes at the end, so we'll see where I rank it for this season. But
I love Elena.
yeah, it is great because like the first time it is on screen, like you can actually see it when she plucks one of the things off her necklace. It's like very subtle though, so if you don't know to look for it, then you almost certainly won't notice.
Yes.
And
So
I
it's
still
really reward
I still
rewatch.
can't figure out when she puts it in the drink.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely not shown on camera.
Mhm.
And it's, it's risky. She was sharing a goblet. I'm sorry, Joffrey and Marjorie were sharing a
Were they?
goblet. A
Well, that would explain
wedding
it
chalice.
because she was next to Marjorie, obviously.
Mhm.
Well, as soon as he's like, you know, strangling, being killed painfully, and his face is turning purple, she's like immediately like, "Help your king!" She's so over the top about like people need to save him, so
She's on it.
yeah, and then Cersei immediately she looks up and Tyrion's standing there. Oh, well, by the way, Sansa is just absconded with as what is that guy's name? Danto shows up and he's like, "We gotta get out of here." So she
Mhm.
does, and so that just leaves Tyrion kind of hanging high and dry there, and he's just with the smoking gun, the goblet in his hand, and Cersei has him taken away.
Yes. So of course the poison came from the necklace that Dantos gave to Sansa, but Sansa had no idea.
Mm.
And this is her big getaway, which makes Tyrion look even more guilty. And of course, Cersei immediately thinks that Tyrion does it, especially because Joffrey points at him as he dies.
Yes, he does.
Because he was just being a massive dick to Tyrion, so it doesn't look
No,
great.
it does not look good for Tyrion. So that's the end of that episode. Episode 3 is called Breaker of Chains, and it starts with Sansa. She's just making a break for it, and with Dantos, and they kind of sail off into this misty. It's a little bit. They're pushing it a little, where it's like bright and happy during the wedding, and then suddenly it's just very dark and misty as they row away.
Yeah.
And
Very Pirates of the Caribbean.
yeah, it is. And so they get up to the ship, and who's on there but Littlefinger,
What?
who's returned. We haven't seen him since Chaos's Ladder, I don't think.
Well, he's
Um,
certainly cashing in on
I
that.
know this is a very good season for him, actually. But he immediately kills Dantos or has him killed. I can't remember if he does it himself. And
He does.
and then he's just like,
Yeah.
he's got Sansa now, and they're sailing to parts unknown.
And Sansa's like, "What the fuck, dude?"
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
He's
"Well,
like, hey, he's loosened.
yeah, he knows he's a drunk." Uh, Also, this was really all my idea.
Yeah, and he does like reveal it's a little bit later on where he kind of talks about gets more in depth about the assassination with Sansa, but here like he obviously reveals that he knows that it's the necklace that poisoned him, and like he crushes one to show her that they're brittle because they're really supposed to be like these precious diamonds as far as she knows.
Yes.
And then like he just throws the rest of it on Dantos, getting rid of the smoking gun basically. It's very awesome. Then because Olenna, she's very pleased with this tournament. It's not revealed that she's behind it yet, but she's like talking with Marjorie. She's like, "Well, this is excellent news for you."
Such a great murder mystery. I mean, I guess they give you an answer, but obviously Littlefinger wasn't there.
They
So
give it
it's
to
not
you.
the answer.
Yeah, they give it to you pretty fast, really. Like it's not like John Aaron where they drag that out for.
If
Well,
you had a
technically
week
they're still
between-
dragging it out, but they drag it out as far as Ned is concerned for that whole season.
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, if you had a week in between those episodes coming out,
That's true.
you could do a lot.
Yeah. And there's still this isn't the episode where they. I mean, right now I guess you figure it's Littlefinger. You don't really understand how, because obviously someone had to be there to put the poison in the drink. We don't know who did that yet.
Yes. In the books, there are some variations and people still speculate about what exactly happened.
Really?
There's lots of different layers there.
Okay. Well, then, oh man, the hits just keep coming on this episode because it immediately cuts to they're in the Sept and they're looking at Joffrey's corpse. It's Cersei and Tommen, and then Tywin walks in and he's like, "Your brother's dead."
Oh,
And it's just immediately grooming him for rule. And Cersei is not too pleased about it, but what is she gonna do? It's the most powerful man in the kingdoms. And so then he's kind of quizzing him on what makes a good king and everything. And then he's actually gonna, as they're leaving, he's about to teach him how sex works, basically. But instead, we get Cersei's in for a little bit of a rape at the hands of Jaime. So it goes from a high to a low.
Decision was this. We were about to get Tywin giving Tommen the talk.
Yeah.
which is just top tier television.
Sure.
Coming off of just a brilliant, manipulative, like thing. And we were like getting introduced to Tommen as a character because
That's true. I mean, he's obviously been in the background at times, but
yeah, but he wasn't on anyone's radar. I
no.
mean, I remember asking you after it happened, okay, so who's the heir? And you were like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because Joffrey had been the king for more than, well, let's see, all of season 3, all of season 2, and then, the last chunk of season 1.
Hmm.
So that's a very long time. And like, to give you an idea, like the equivalent of that from here would be, I guess, all of season 4, all of season 5, and a chunk of season 6 would be the equivalent. But
And
anyway,
he was great.
it had
I mean,
been
not a
on.
great king or person, but what a great character. What a delight. And well, that might be the wrong word. He's obviously insufferable and will make you as mad as almost anyone in the show, but like in a fun way, not in a crasser way. Like I love to hate Joffrey.
Yeah.
It's truly one of those.
I think for most people though, he was truly hated. I think he was like what's he was like Skylar White hated, I think.
Oh, really?
Well, if you look at the top, because there was a list that was circulating a year or two ago where it was like the top 10 most hated TV show characters of all time.
Mhm.
And he was on there, Cersei was on there, Skylar White was on there. I think Caillou was on there. That kid.
Why is Caillou catching all these strays?
I can't remember.
But no, I mean, I think Jack Gleason did a wonderful job with him, and he really goes out with a bang.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So then we get to Arya and the Hound again, and what are they doing? But they are taking advantage of the generosity of father and his daughter, and they're just ended up robbing them blind. First, they stay for dinner and have some soup.
Yeah, they asked
It
him
goes for a while, honestly. This scene
to stay and protect him for a little bit, and
yeah, they agree at first, but it's really just because they found out that the big mistake this father makes is that he's got some gold saved up or whatever it is that
to
he
get
steals.
through the winter. And I mean, Arya is not on board with it.
No. She's horrified.
As she should be. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And
Alan says they're dead comes the winter anyway.
yeah, that's my heart.
So that's that. And then we have Sam back at Castle Black, and he's getting very concerned about Gilly's safety here with all these rogues.
Sure.
And so he's considering taking her to Molestown, but he hasn't pulled the trigger on that yet. Then we have Davos. This is where he's getting the news that Joffrey's been killed, which Stannis immediately attributes to that leeching they did in season 3. He's like, and now I don't have the rest of them, so I can't capitalize on this magic that I've uncovered. So Davos says maybe they should hire some sellswords from the east to supply his army. And then it kind of immediately goes from that to he's having one of his reading lessons with Shireen. And he gets the idea. Well, I guess she kind of says something to him, and he triggers this idea in him that like, oh, we could ask the Iron Bank for funding for this concept.
Yes.
So he's very excited about that, and he starts having her write the letter.
Anytime Davos and Shireen are on screen together, it's gonna be a great time.
Yeah. Then Sam does take Gilly to Molestown. It's shithole. There's really nothing else to say about it.
Yeah.
It sucks. And then we have more of Oberyn having some sex and Littlefinger's brother. He's definitely the character that gets laid the most this season. But as usual,
Duh.
But as usual,
Hands
he's interrupted, this time by Tywin, and he can't believe it. And here Tywin is actually asking him to be one of the judges in Tyrion's trial, and he also asks him to be a member of the small council. And in exchange, he says that he's going to help Oberyn. He could like arrange a meeting between him and the Mountain. Says he's going to help him serve justice to Elia Martell's murder.
Yes.
So that's a big claim.
Mm-hmm. And I think
so Oberyn agrees.
Doesn't Tyrion have a talk with Tywin about like, hey, you can get another brute. Give up the
I don't
mountain.
think so.
Maybe that's a book thing.
Yeah, I think it's a book. Okay, then we have Tyrion in prison. Podrick smuggling him some provisions. He's very loyal. But he's learning about who the judges are. He learns that Sansa's vanished. He's like, that's not good news. Then he asks for Jaime, and he tells Podrick he really needs to get out of there because like Podrick's been approached by someone asking him to rat on him, and he said that he's not going to do it. So Tyrion says that he's in danger. So they have like this kind of heartfelt thing where they're saying goodbye.
Yeah. Everyone loves Podrick, so it's
Yeah.
sad.
And then we cut to a new character, Ollie. And his village is just getting absolutely sacked by the wildlings. His parents are killed.
Oh,
The
poor
Thin gets right up in his
Ollie.
face and tells him to report it to the Night's Watch. So cuts immediately to the Night's Watch. And they're all kind of discussing this. Alistair and Eamon and John. But they are all in agreement that, yeah, we can't really spare anybody to strike back because they know that the main force is coming. But then right at that time, there's someone coming to the wall. So they're like, oh shit, this could be it. And in fact, it's Ed and Grin who have not been here this whole time because they were captives from the mutineers at Craster's Keep. And as soon as they come in and they say that, John says, we need to go north and kill them all. Does not skip a beat. And Alistair's like, did you not listen to what we were just saying about how they can't spare anybody? But he's like, his hypothesis is if Mance Rayder's army comes on him and finds out how weak they actually are on the wall, because he told him what they had 1,000 men, then they're in trouble.
Which, of course, discovering the mutiny would give away.
Well, yeah, because they could make those guys talk. They're not loyal.
I'm sure. Well, and even if they didn't they killed the Lord Commander, they're clearly not going back to the wall.
Yeah, so he's like, but right now he does not have clearance to do that. And then the episode ends with Daenerys bafflingly. But this is I actually do think this is fairly entertaining scene. They were trying to make it. I don't think it was quite as cool as what they were hoping for, but it's like where the people of Marine send out that rider, facer champion, and so she like goes down the list. She's like, I can't rescue, can't rescue, can't rescue. Daria Naharis, I guess you're all right.
Yeah.
And then he just absolutely destroys him, which is pretty cool. And then they launch I guess the idea, this is the first time I really kind of put it together, but they launch a bunch of collars at the walls, but they're open collars.
Yeah.
So I guess the idea is like these are the collars that were worn by the people she's freed already.
And so it's to inspire the people to revolt within the slaves.
Right. So that's kind of her big mission right now. Kind of a weird spot to end the episode. Not quite as strong as the Purple Wedding, but solid, I guess. Episode 4 is called Oathkeeper. We start with Grey Worm, actually. He's getting English lessons from Missandei. So kind of the beginning of their whole arc. But then Daenerys comes in and she says it's time for our mission. So what he does is he kind of leads a sort of covert detachment into the city, and they give some weapons to some of the slaves there that are sort of organizing, I guess.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, that part's a little slow for me.
A little slow for you. Then they kill Ed Works. They kill the masters, or some of them anyway. And Daenerys takes the city. And then to celebrate, she has some nice crucifixion of the masters that she can catch.
Yeah, because it wasn't just the one little girl that they crucified.
Yeah, it was like
a whole
100
line of
something.
them pointing to the city, and so she crucified 100 of.
It's more than 100. It's 130 something, or I don't know.
Sure, the same amount.
Yeah.
And she was not discriminatory in.
Well, they were masters, obviously.
Yes, but she didn't
know anything about them.
Put them on trial and be like,
No.
This one was one of the ones that crucified the girls, and this one actually spoke up against that. Whatever.
Yeah, not concerned about that. As far as she's concerned, they're all enemies. Then we have Jamie. He's continuing his lessons with Braun. They're not going too great, but he says, "Have you not visited Tyrion yet?" And he hasn't. So Braun's like telling him, "Maybe you ought to do that."
Yeah, rude, Jamie.
And I guess he does. I think he does visit him right there, but nothing like really major happens yet. Like it's the first visit that they have. Sansa is with Littlefinger. So this is where Littlefinger kind of breaks it down and kind of reveals how Joffrey was poisoned. He doesn't like say who did it, but he's like talks about my new friends, all that. And then it immediately transitions to Olenna, and she is like getting ready to leave. Like she's on her way out of the city. And then she's with Marjorie, and she just comes clean. She's like, yeah, it was me, basically.
Yeah.
She says it a little more artfully than that. Well, or she says like, they've got Tyrion on trial for a crime he didn't commit. And Marjorie's like, well, he could have. She's like, he could have, but he didn't.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so good. Like she was not gonna let her granddaughter.
That's what she tells her,
marry
basically.
Monster. So this comes down to what Sansa's answer was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's really interesting that it all goes back to that first when we are introduced to Olenna and also Sansa, and they have that meeting, and she's like, what is he like? And she tells the truth, and that his fate is basically sealed right there.
Yeah. I mean, she's ruthless. She's not a perfect person, but it is badass. And certainly, I don't know if anyone in the audience is grieving
No, definitely not.
Joffrey.
Definitely not.
He is a child, so it's brutal, but he had a ton of power. He was doing a lot of damage. And her granddaughter, I mean, if I had to pick between Joffrey and Tommen,
Yeah, right. That's the calculus she made.
so she's not really as concerned with with Marjorie being queen. That's more Mance, her son, Marjorie's father. But she's like, oh, if he insists on her being queen, let's make it with Tommen.
Sure, sure.
So of course Mance is not in on any of this. This is all Olenna.
Is it Mance?
Why am I saying Mance? It's
Yeah.
I know this.
Can't remember his name either. Oh, it doesn't matter. John is training a new group of Night's Watch recruits, which includes Locke. That's a pretty big reveal. He's one of Bolton's men. Which I think there was like a scene when Bolton returns home, or maybe it's even back in season 3 where he's like, kind of tells him to go find because really his goal doesn't have anything to do with John. Really, his goal is to find Brandon. Just Bran. Mostly, I guess we're gone if he's with him, but mostly Bran. And I guess the best lead they have is that they were going north, and John's up there.
Yeah,
so that's why he's up there. But yeah, obviously John doesn't know anything about that. But Thorne sends him off. He says, "Here's a lowly steward. You're not gonna be training these guys." But then Janos Slynt actually is kind of a little bit surprising or interesting, where Janos Slynt is actually sort of counseling Sir Alistair. He says maybe you should let him go north because Janos Slynt is kind of realizing that John is becoming awfully popular, and Alistair is not officially in command. He's just kind of in the interim because I guess he was like lead ranger or whatever. And so he's sort of ruling in the interim after the death of the Lord Commander, but they're gonna have a vote at some point, and he's like, you might want to get rid of Jon Snow if you can.
Well, and really, he was only interim lead ranger in the case that
right.
Ben Stark came
because
back.
Benjen was the real lead ranger. Okay, so that's kind of what's going on there. Cersei is telling Jaime that he needs to put more guards around Tommen's room, and Jaime's telling her that he doesn't believe that Tyrion is guilty, and she's basically immediately proven right that he does need more guards because Marjorie visits Tommen in his bedroom, much to his delight. And then we have Brienne of Tarth looking at the Kingsguard book with Jaime, and this is where he gives her his sword.
Oathkeeper.
Which he names Oathkeeper. And also some new armor. And he charges her with finding and protecting Sansa, since he can't really do it himself. And he sends Podrick with her so that he's safe, I guess.
Setting up a great new duo.
She's not as excited about that part. But she takes him.
I see where I am.
Yeah, she takes him, and Bronn is actually there to see Podrick off because they're buds. And then Sam is worried about Gilly in Molestown as usual this season, and now he's worried. He was worried about her safety in the Night's Watch. Then he sent her to Molestown. Now he's worried about her safety in Molestown because the wildlings are about. But nobody really cares that much about Sam's fear. So then we have Alistair Thorne, who's like, "All right, John, you can go and take out Craster's the mutineers up there." So he kind of makes an announcement where he's like, "Anybody want to come with me?" Basically, and there's some people that come with him, and most notably it's Ed and Grin, and also Locke.
Yes.
Interesting. And then we find out that there's like a scene up there with the mutineers, and basically it's just to give them an idea that they suck.
Oh my God, do they suck?
But also they have ghosts locked up, so that's kind of a reveal. They got ghosts up there.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you didn't think they sucked before,
right? And Bran is like they're close, and he's having a wolf dream, and he actually sees through Summer's eyes ghosts locked up, and so they go up there to investigate, and the mutineers capture them as well. And then you find out that they suck even more. Lots of building up those mutineers in this sequence with some bad characters. Bad characters being Bran's crew.
Let's not group in Mira.
I'm absolutely grouping her in. And then finally, as if we didn't have enough of this northern storyline, we find out this is the cliffhanger for episode 4 is what the White Walkers are doing with Craster's babies.
Yes.
So they take him up to like some altar up there, and they bury this ice dagger in him, and it turns them into White Walkers,
Yes.
which is interesting.
It is. I don't know how much of that will come to pass in the books or not. We don't
Hmm.
obviously have a White Walker POV
Yes.
in the books. Um, Also, it's Mace Tyrell, not Mance.
Yeah, right.
It's driving me crazy.
Okay, so episode 5 is called First of His Name. This is where Tommen is crowned as the new king, and while that's going on, Marjorie and Cersei have a little conversation. They're actually both agreed that Marjorie should be the one that's betrothed to him. Not really sure what Cersei's angle here is, but she kind of agrees with her that that's probably for the best.
Well, they still need the alliance.
Yeah, well, yes. I understand. I guess that's it. Because Tywin definitely still is interested in that, but because he absolutely wants the alliance, but um yeah, Cersei, obviously, we know that she's not a big Marjorie fan.
Yeah, but she's not at a low point with her yet.
Yeah. So then Daenerys gets the news about Joffrey's death, and she also learns that the Masters have retaken Yunkai and Astapor, so that's very frustrating for her.
Yeah, and undoes a lot of her hard work.
Right. Littlefinger and Arya are arriving in the Eyrie, and this is where we learn that this is the big reveal, really, where he's talking with Lysa, because like they're all there together, and then they kind of Lysa sort of sends Sansa away with what's the little freak's name? Robin. And this is where it's like kind of revealed, like she's like it's just the two of them, so she's like coming clean here, where she's just it's like for us, we're finding out that she was the one that actually assassinated John Arryn and kind of
Yes.
set this whole thing in motion. And he even says he's like, don't even like talk about it with me, because only speaking it can make it real, you know.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a worse reveal in the books, but
Really?
well, I think so. But part of it's just timing. But I mean, they really held on to that one for a long
Yes,
time.
they did.
That's
And
the first murder mystery.
and then they get married, like right there. So I'm sure that she's couldn't be happier with this.
Yeah, she's a little much.
Yeah, she certainly is. Okay, and so lots of weddings, just weddings left and right. So then Cersei and Tywin are planning Tommen and Cersei's weddings, and this is where Tywin reveals that yeah, we're broke, which is why we need the Tyrells. Like they don't have any gold anymore or anything, but it's just like basically the family name that is keeping them as they're keeping their status.
Yeah, specifically, Casterly Rock doesn't have any gold left in the mines.
Right.
And so it's all been pretense
Yeah.
for a long time. Similarly to the big empty vault in season 2.
Right. Much more boring version of that.
Sure.
There's just a little scene here with the Hound and Sansa where she's like they're going to sleep, and Arya's like reading off her list, and he's like, "What are you gonna name everybody in fucking Westeros?" And he finds out that he is also on her list,
Yes.
but he didn't really care. Then
Give some pause for
yeah, he like looks at her, but it's really all there is to it for now.
I think it's really just like it's bold of her to say it to my face.
Yeah, sure. Then we have Lysa Arryn again, and she has like this. It's just her and Sansa. They're kind of having this one-on-one. She has like this just tight, crazy flip out where she's just like, it's really mean to Sansa, and like it's the idea is that she's jealous of her.
Yes.
Like she's concerned that Littlefinger would be more interested in her than Lysa Arryn, which is absolutely correct. However, we haven't had that confirmed yet.
Yes.
As the viewer.
But this is the reveal to Sansa that Lysa is off
nuts.
and not just like her nice aunt. We're safe.
Right. It's bad news for her. And then we have just this little scene with Brienne and Podrick that she's not pleased with him and his squiring abilities.
Well, he's not very experienced.
No.
And she has never had one. She doesn't feel like she needs one. And
yeah.
So she does not really good at accepting his help. And he just wants to help, but he's not any good.
No, he's terrible.
He's got one skill.
Yes, and it's not being a squire out in the field.
It's singing.
And then we have another scene. This is a short scene, but I actually forgot like how much I get a kick out of it. But it's like Sansa's up training, and the Hound kind of is like, "What are you doing with all that dancing around?" Like he just thinks it's ridiculous, and she's like, "I learned this from Syrio Forel, the greatest sword fighter in the world, or whatever." Mm-hmm. And then he's like, "Well, is he dead?" She's like, "Yeah, he's dead." And then she's like, "He was killed in a fight." And he says, "Who by?" And she says, Maren Trant, like he just can't believe it. That actor does such a good job at like conveying like how incredulous he is, like on his face. You can see him just Marin Trot.
As if like, how skilled could he be?
Yeah,
It's like a
exactly.
sword.
Yeah.
He was like, why do you have a wooden sword?
Right. Yeah, he just totally assaults the skill of this, basically her idol at this point is Sirio.
Yes, they have very different fighting styles,
Uh-huh.
and she has different things to learn from the two of them
Yeah.
for sure.
But anyway, I just think that's a fun. We'll see.
Yeah.
Then we have Cersei meeting with Oberyn, which is pretty cool. She seeks him out. He's like out. He's actually doing some poetry. She walks up to him, very Ghost of Tsushima of him, and
He's a layered man.
yeah, he is. He's so awesome. And then she asks him to give her a gift to Marcella, which ends up being a ship she has out in the harbor. And he's like, yeah, sure. You know, her little girl's into her.
Little dig there.
Yeah, exactly. Still Podrick sucking at being a squire. They just like go back to that well a couple times here. Still utter trash.
Yeah.
And then we have back in the north. So it starts with Jojen. So they're all like tied up. Jojen's having like this vision of his death. Wouldn't that be a tragedy? And then Locke is kind of out there scouting out the camp. And so he goes back to John, and they're kind of formulating their plan. Carl, who is the leader of these mutineers, he's getting ready to give Mira a little bit of a rape.
Oh, it's so creepy.
And the Night's Watch attacks just in the nick of time. And during all the fighting, Locke is like, well, great, this is what I needed. So he goes out and finds Bran, and he's gonna take him hostage and, I guess take him back to Roose Bolton. But Bran takes control of Hodor and snaps his neck, so that's gonna Locke.
Yeah.
That's that. And then
This is a bigger deal than him just taking care of Hodor to make him quiet during a storm.
Right,
He's
it's
just
him.
made Hodor kill somebody.
right, and then Hodor is kind of upset about it. But
Oh, he's shaken.
they
Yeah.
go right over that.
He's a gentle giant.
Because there's a big battle going on, and he wants to reunite with John, who's like right there fighting with those guys. But of course, Jojen kills any joy that we could have possibly had, and decides that we just need to leave without even saying a word to John. So they do, and then John has the cool scene where he kills Carl. It's very satisfying, and Ghost kills Rast, also very satisfying.
Sure.
So it's great, lots of nice little payoff there. I really love the detail of like John like walks in there. And he sees Carl in there. He's like killing somebody, and then he just like shuts the door behind him. It's very badass. Anyway, that's episode 5. I want to say season. Episode 6 is The Laws of Gods and Men. Now, I think this is, if you look up the top episodes of all time of Game of Thrones, this is routinely ranked very like top 10 level episode.
Okay.
It starts actually with Davos of all people, and Stannis in the Iron Bank. So I think this is the first time we actually see the Iron Bank as a institution.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get him to fund Stannis, which doesn't seem like a very good idea. I gotta have to go with the Iron Bank on that one. It does not seem like a really great plan. But somehow Davos with his golden tongue convinces him to do it.
Yeah, it's pretty epic, his little speech.
And then he goes off and I guess Salador's son is in Bravos for some reason, or he just tracks him down. Anyway, it cuts immediately to that, and he's giving him some money. He's like, you need to come back with us. And honestly, I don't know if we ever see Salador's son again.
Really? Oh, that's a shame. Kind of like him.
Well,
He's like piratey.
right.
But
He's definitely a pirate, yeah. I don't
has an interesting relationship with Davos.
that I guess they kind of just use him as a figurehead for the fact that they're hiring, but I don't remember him ever showing up again.
I don't either.
We'll have to keep that as a note. Maybe I'll asterisk him because gotta like figure out where he goes on the list if he's done. Okay, then we have, this is a cool scene where if you remember at the end of season 3, Yara was like, well, I'm gonna go, I don't care what my father says, I'm gonna go rescue Theon. So this is it. She's making her rescue attempt. She's arrived at the Dread Fort, and she breaks in there, finds him with the hounds, and it seems like it could have been a success, but he's like too brainwashed and
He won't get out of the
won't
cage.
get out of the cage. I think he actually bites her to go back in the cage.
Yeah, which of course is damage from the fake out escape attempt
Right.
that Ramsay did to make sure that he didn't take opportunities like this.
Yeah. So then Ramsay comes in, and they just kind of had to get out of there because Ramsay's a stone cold killer, and Ramsay actually rewards Theon's loyalty with a bath, which was probably much needed.
Yeah, it's also creepy. Like Ramsay does it himself. It's still a big power trip.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, then we have Daenerys learning that Drogon has killed a shepherd sheep. That's not so bad. And so she pays him back for his trouble. And
Nice of her.
yeah, and then we have that idiot, I don't even remember his name because it's a stupid Marine name, but it's the debut of that insufferable character that she ends up getting betrothed to later on. I guess that's a spoiler, but he's here asking for permission to bury his father, who she crucified, and he says that he was actually against slavery or whatever. No, I don't think he was against slavery, but he was against crucifying those girls.
Yeah. So it introduces a little bit of nuance where she just kind of came in and dealt with everything with an iron fist.
So she agrees to let him do that.
Going back to the Iron Bank real quick, the Iron Bank actor guy that we see,
the one guy,
main character in Sherlock, the TV show.
So he's Sherlock Holmes.
No, Benedict Cumberbatch is Sherlock Holmes.
Okay.
But he is one of the actors in this show that I can only see as their character in another thing.
You have seen a lot more shows than I have.
That's true.
Okay, then we have a small council meeting, which are always entertaining. So here we have Tywin. He's put a bounty on the Hound's head, and he's like, how much gold would it take to have somebody try their luck with a hound? And somebody says 10 crowns or something. He says, make it 100. And then he learns of Daenerys taking over Marine, and he actually comes up with a plan to deal with that. I kind of forgot about this little subplot. He's like, I'll do something. Mace, give me my pen. And it kind of cuts there. And then it goes to Oberyn meeting with Varys. And it's kind of a weird scene because it's the only time that Varys sort of insinuates that he's interested in the Iron Throne himself. But he could just be doing that to throw Oberyn off, I guess. But he that is odd. Oberyn's like talking about how, he's obviously a man that's driven by his desires, and Varys has none. And so Varys is like, well, whenever you don't have any desires, it gives you room for other pursuits. And he looks at the throne.
Yeah, that's weird. That only makes sense to me if he's thinking about who he wants to put on the throne.
Sure.
Because I don't think he ever had any interest in it himself. Mm-hmm. That's just...
Yeah, it's the only time where it is implied that he's interested in it at all.
I mean, his motives are iffy. And in the books, I don't buy at all that he's in anything for the good of the realm.
Really?
He's absolutely villain-coded.
No.
There is nuance to him, but I think he's full of shit with all of his for the realm stuff, because he has ulterior motives. In the show, I think they actually do try to make him more for the realm.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, and then the big finale of this episode, which is really the reason that it's ranked as highly as it is the trial of Tyrion Lannister, which goes for, a solid 20 minutes. Especially just everything that he's done leading up to this point. It's really a big moment for that character, where everything he's done is every little slight against anybody that still has any power in King's Landing, comes back to bite him. He's got Meryn Trant on the stand talking about some shit he did, and obviously has Cersei turning his words on him, and insinuating that he was behind the death of Joffrey, and even Varys testifies against him. Yeah, because what's he gonna do?
Mm-hmm. A lot of his mistakes coming back to bite him.
Yeah.
Some of it is out of context, and some of it is well, yeah, he did. He shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, and then it's not going well. So then they have a little break, and Jaime talks with him, and he's like, "Man, this is not good." And Tyrion's like, "Well, we knew the outcome before it even started, or whatever." And so then Jaime has a little meeting with his father. He's having a nice lunch. He's not bothered by the proceedings whatsoever. And he's like, "Tell you what, let Tyrion live. I'll do what you want. I'll go to Casterly Rock. I'll stop being a Kingsguard.
I'll be your heir.
Yeah, be your heir and everything." And he's like, "Nope." He's signed, sealed. And he's even as he walks out, he's got this smirk on his face, Tywin's got everybody right where I want him. This is Tywin really thinking he's got everything made here. He's brought yes, Joffrey's died, but he's brought the Tyrells back into the fold without skipping a beat. Mm-hmm. And now he's got a much more malleable king that he can control a lot better. Honestly, It's kind of an improvement for him.
Definitely.
And then he's even sort of turned Oberyn, he thinks he has anyway, where he's just I've got Oberyn in, and that kind of brings Dorne into the fold, and I can, if I have to lose the mountain, he's probably thinking, yeah, whatever. He probably feels like he doesn't need the mountain if he has or not control, but he has an alliance with the Tyrells and Dorne and everything. And, he's going to finally get rid of Tyrion, and maybe he doesn't kill him, but he's at least he'll be gone, and at the wall, and I won't have to deal with him anymore. So he's just, this is like maybe Tywin's highest point right here.
Sure.
Like while he's having this lunch.
Yeah.
And Jamie comes in there. But then at the trial, I mean, if he had any sense at all, he would have just like ended the trial right there. But instead, the trial continues and Shay comes in and just turns on Tyrion in epic fashion. And she's just airing out everything he did and lying, frankly. This is the first person that actually like is dishonest about Tyrion's behavior. Because everybody else in this trial, like, yeah, they twist it and like it's out of context, but those are all things that he absolutely said and did. But she is like saying that he absolutely conspired with Sansa to kill Joffrey.
I mean, some of what she says is true. Like she
Right.
exposes stuff like bedroom stuff that's really embarrassing for him.
Right. Dobrin is very entertained by. And then yeah, so she just like airs everything out, and then Tyrion eventually can't take it anymore, and he says he's going to confess, and that's where he gives his like big speech where he's like, "I didn't kill him, but I wish I had. I wish I could poison everybody in this room and everything." He has this big outburst that's kind of legendary.
Yeah.
And so then he just says, "Screw this trial. I'm request trial by combat."
And Tyrion is all downhill from here, but it is a good.
I don't know if I would say that quite yet.
Okay.
I would say after this season, he's all downhill.
Okay. Okay. Definitely. Okay. The end of the season will cover one of the biggest omissions that makes people mad, and I'm not going to be able to talk about it because we can't talk about book stuff.
Okay.
But I'm going to be biting my tongue a lot as we approach what happens after this point.
Okay. So that's the end of that episode. Episode 7 is called Mockingbird. This is a really interesting episode. I think not as flashy as the last one, but almost as good, I would argue. So this is where Jamie, it starts with him. He's just furious at Tyrion for this outburst. He can't believe that he did that. And he's like, "I can't fight for you. I suck with my left hand." And like, but he also is like, and Cersei's gonna choose. And so Tyrion doesn't know who Cersei's gonna choose. Originally he says Meryn Trant, and then Jamie's like, "No, not Meryn Trant." And then it cuts to the Mountain killing some people. I don't even know who he's killing. And Cersei's like,
just having a fun.
Yeah, Cersei's like basically like picking him, So not good. The most kind of the final boss, really. Like nobody's we've seen could really hold a candle to them. I guess like Loras knocked him off that horse or whatever. But in terms of like single combat, it seems like how could anybody stop him?
Well, the Hound did. Like he was trying to kill Loras after that.
Yeah,
the
Hound held him off, but the Hound is in no position to help Tyrion either.
Yeah.
So
nor would he.
But interesting, we do cut to the Hound next, and they come across him and Arya come across this man that's dying outside his hut that's been burned down, and kind of have a little philosophical talk with him, and eventually the Hound puts him out of his misery. And then right then, out of nowhere, they're attacked by Rorge and Biter of all people, which was the two people that were locked up with Jack and Agar in season 2.
Yeah, they're no good.
And Biter bites the hell out of the Hound, but the Hound kills him. And then Arya kills the other guy with her sword.
She is racking up a body count this season.
Definitely. And so they kind of have a little bonding moment over killing those guys. And then we get Jon returning from killing those bastards up north very successfully, which is very disappointing for Alistair. And he's even got ghosts with him, so Alistair tells him to lock. But Jon gives his report, and he says that while they're out there, which we don't actually see this happen, but he says while they're out there, they saw some evidence that Mance Rayder was getting close, like they saw some fire or something. And he says, "We should seal the tunnel to keep him out." And Alistair says, "We're not sealing that tunnel, you fool."
Yeah.
So that's that. We have Tyrion in his cell. He's like, this is kind of him vetting all his options. He's like trying to find somebody that's going to fight for him. He has Bronn come in, and Bronn's like, "Nah, man, I don't think we're going to do that." Like at this point, Bronn is...
He's not going to do anything for me if I'm dead.
Yeah, Bronn is like elevated. He's been elevated somewhat. Like he actually does have a castle and somebody that he's betrothed to. I don't know that he really has a castle because she is technically the second in the line, Lawless Stokeworth. But
he's not too worried about that.
But he's like, well, we can get rid of the older sister if we need to.
Yeah.
Jesus. And he's like, maybe I could take the mountain, but one false move and I'm done. And he's like, so, he feels bad about it actually. Like we do have a little bit of humanity from Bronn here, where he's like,
just a touch.
He like Tyrion's like, well, I guess I'll just have to kill the mountain myself. Won't that be something sing songs about later, and he's like, "Well, hope to hear him someday." You know, he clearly is like upset, like sad about his friend Tyrion dying, but he's just like, I'm not gonna be the one to save you this time. So that's bad news for Tyrion. We have Dario making a move on Daenerys, a successful move, I believe, or maybe it's later on whenever he's successful. But anyway, it's just that courtship.
Yeah, he's very arrogant and
Very arrogant man. Yes, just,
very bold
and I guess
moves, and
she's into that.
pays off.
Yep. We have Melisandre breaking her character's continuity by bathing without her necklace on.
Yeah,
That seems like a major oversight. One of the most obvious ones in the show, I have to say. Like,
just so we could see her naked again.
well, we could have seen her naked with the necklace just as easily.
Well, I know, but that's the only reason that scene exists.
Sure. Yeah, it's so true. Because Celis comes in there. She's clearly resenting her because, she knows that Melisandre has slept with her husband and is, in fact, more attractive than Celis. And she's like kind of like eyeing her and stuff. But, she keeps reminding herself that she even like, at one point, she even like says something to herself about a thing done in service of the Lord could be a sin.
Mhm.
So it's really a kind of an important scene in the sense that it is showing you that Celis really has some concerns with what's going on here, but she keeps like reminding herself to it's all for a higher cause.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely in a cult, like,
Oh, yeah.
and she is wrestling with that in the way of like she is bought in, but it doesn't all jive with her, and she has to deal with that.
Yeah, and then another thing that they discuss here is she tells Melisandre that she doesn't want Shireen to come with them on their journey north, which, if you recall, like you can kind of put the pieces together where they're going, but I was surprised the first time watching this.
Yeah.
By where they end up going. But Melisandre says actually she's going to be needed up there, so she will be coming with us. So that's an interesting thing too, like about Celis, like you could sort of interpret that as Celis kind of trying to look out for Shireen in a way.
Yeah, she definitely cares for her little in her own way.
Right.
She's still a terrible mother.
Oh yes, one of the worst. Okay, then we have Daenerys again telling Jorah that she has sent Dario and his men to take over Yunkai and execute every master there. But Jorah doesn't like that, so he actually convinces her to at least give them a choice. And they had this interesting conversation here. I actually took a few quotes here, particularly from Jorah, that I thought was interesting for Daenerys' character, where he says, "It's tempting to see your enemies as evil, all of them, but there is good and evil on both sides, in every war ever fought." And her initial response is, "Let the priests argue over who is good and evil." But ultimately, she does go with what he says here.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's true up until like season 6. The show really goes with that philosophy.
No, I think that they continue with it through all 8 seasons. It's just there is a big confrontation where that's not the case, obviously.
Sure. I mean, I love that. I love showing.
I mean, they don't really show a
on
whole
both
lot of
sides.
good on the side of the Boltons, I guess. But you're at least like invested in those characters.
Well, yeah, well, and then I mean the Thens are there's not a lot of gray area
Well,
with the Thens.
yeah. They're here now.
They're basically just for you to project all the bad things you've heard about the wildlings. Let you project all that onto the Thens, not have to grapple with it.
Sure. We have Arya and the Hound again. All she really does here is she's kind of helping him treat his wound. He won't let her burn it, but she's still kind of doctors it as best she can without the fire.
Which is, come a long way from.
Yeah, it's definitely they're good. They're growing closer for sure.
He's on our list.
And then we have Brienne and Podrick. They're stopping at what could it be? The Inn in the Crossroads. It's on our calendar right now.
Oh.
And they're getting a meal prepared by Hot Pie, and he's like telling them about all of his tactics with cooking. They're not interested in that. However, Brienne mentions Sansa, and Hot Pie tells her, "Well, I don't know no Sansa, but Arya Stark. I was with her for quite some time." And then he tells her that the last thing he knew was that she was being taken with the Brotherhood, and also the Hound. Obviously, he saw that the Hound was with them.
Yes.
And so, and they're like, "Oh, they're very interesting." So then,
big lead.
Yeah, hugely, the biggest lead they've had by far. And so Podrick is actually the one that he suggests, well, what if we went to the Eyrie, which he's right on the money, which is, because of Tyrion, basically, he knows how everybody's connected. So he's like, that's on her mother's side, so we could go over there and see if that's where they are. She's like, very well, Pod. Whatever.
It doesn't, Hot Pie give them
Yeah, he gives her another piece of bread. Yeah.
to be like, give this to Arya.
Mhm.
You see her, and he's improved quite a bit.
Yeah, we
And
never see.
it's wolf shaped, right?
Yeah, we never see that piece of bread again though, because when she finally does catch up to her, she does not give her that bread.
Well,
It might have gotten a little bit different if she had.
yeah, maybe. That's interesting. I just know, I think like 5 years after the show ended, Hot Pie's actor opened up a little like one day bakery where he made a bunch of the
Oh yeah.
wolf rolls that looked like that. And I just think that's absolutely adorable.
Okay, then we have the scene. And, Tyrion has given up at this point. He's just like, man, nobody's gonna fight for me. I'm done. And then Oberyn comes in and says, actually, I'm gonna be fighting for you, pal.
Oh, what an epic
It
moment.
is such an epic moment.
Because of course it's a showdown against the mountain.
Mhm. Right, yeah. It really, like, if you really, especially on rewatches, it's just like almost feels obvious that that's who's gonna fight for him, because it's like every scene that you see Oberyn, he cannot let the scene go by without mentioning how much he hates the mountain.
Mhm.
And so like as soon as she's picked the mountain, it should be obvious that, oh, this is it.
But I've never watched it with anyone that saw coming.
Right. Yeah. God, it's an amazing scene. That'll definitely be on the moments list.
Mhm.
And then it seems like that should be the end of the episode. In my memory, that was like from the first viewing of the show. That was where it ended. But actually, there's a still important scenes to come, which is with Littlefinger and Sansa, where this is where we finally get confirmation that Littlefinger is into her.
Oh,
And he actually kisses her in this scene,
gross.
and Lysa sees it,
Oof,
which is bad news.
terrible.
And so she calls Sansa into the room with the moon door, and she's like holding her over it, and she's gonna throw her out of it. And Littlefinger shows up. He convinces her to let her go, and he walks up there, and he's like pretending like he's consoling her or whatever. And then he actually, God, I want to talk about this some more later because it's also in my moments list. But he like says, "I've only ever loved one woman." There's actually a great little moment where when he says that, Sansa looks at him like, cause she knows the one woman that he's only that he's never loved, you know what I mean? But Lysa's just like, oh, that's so nice to hear.
Yeah,
And then he
because
says,
she's delusional.
your sister. And then he pushes her ass out that door.
Yeah.
And it's like, anyway, we'll talk about it more later because I have a lot of thoughts about this scene in particular.
Mhm.
But it is a big moment for that character, like both of these things put together. Because
Yeah.
this is the first time where we are really getting a pretty comprehensive look at what Littlefinger's end goal is here.
Mhm. And it's interesting his motivations here. Like he sometimes sees Sansa as like the daughter he could have had. Sometimes
Well,
he
particularly
sees her
early
as-
on when Catelyn's still alive.
Yeah. But even after that, like sometimes he takes on a paternal role, and sometimes he
Sure,
sees
sure.
her as like young cat
Mhm.
and like the love interest. And so he doesn't say like, oh, and now I love Sansa too. It's just Catelyn.
Mhm.
He's just got this weird projection thing.
Right.
Very creepy,
It's
but it works
fascinating.
psychologically.
Yeah. I think I find it to be very realistic. Like one of the more like darker aspects of the show in some ways, but I think like that to me is more realistic than like an over the top villain like a Ramsay or something, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I've seen like hour-long analysis of his psychology and
Mhm.
how all those dynamics work and how it all feeds into his motivations and his childhood trauma, which is delved into a little bit more in the books.
Great.
So it's even richer and there's more to chew on.
Yeah.
That I can't wait to talk about once we get there.
Okay, we'll talk about that some more. But then we go, man, the hates keep coming because now we have episode 8, The Mountain and the Viper. Man, this season is good. So then we have it starts with the wildlings and they're in Molestown. They slaughter everybody in there. But luckily it is Ygritte who finds Gilly in the back room and spares her.
Yes. Phew. And her baby, of course, is always with her.
Right, of course, Little Sam.
Little
But of course,
Sam.
Big Sam does not know this, and so he's just like, "It's over. I've got them killed." Just distraught.
Oh, it's so good. You're just it's not it plays a little comedic because you
Yeah,
know
definitely.
that he's okay, but also your heart just goes out to him. Like he's
And
just
he's
a
always talking. He's
sweetie.
always talking about it with his friends, and they're clearly sick of hearing about it. But they're just like, "Yeah, man, it's tough." And Ed's like, "She survived a lot of stuff. Maybe maybe she can hate it, which is kind of a nice little thing for Ed because he's like the most negative person ever.
Yeah, that's all. Ed's always the one that's predicting like the worst possible thing that could happen. And so it's really sweet that he's
Yeah.
trying to be positive for his buddy.
Right.
It's a little breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Despite being absolutely dark, like he thinks his love has been slaughtered.
And the baby, which is equally disturbing. Okay, so that's great. Then we have with Daenerys, one of the more interesting things that's happened is Grey Worm sees Missandei taking a bath,
Yes.
and he's very interested.
He does not look away.
No, he does not. But then, like, he goes up to her later and he kind of apologizes for making her uncomfortable. But by the end of that little discussion, she says that she's glad. He's all
Yes. So we read very differently if she was still like 11, like she is in the books.
That actress ain't 11, I'll tell you
No.
that. Okay, then we have Theon convincing the Ironborn at Moat Cailin to surrender to Ramsay, which is, this is Ramsay's big goal right now, to get in the good graces of his father again. So he goes in there and it's very interesting, a very psychological scene where he goes in there and he's like, he puts his Theon Greyjoy guys back on, but they're kind of talking back to him and it's kind of cracking a little bit. But then like the second in command kills the leader in command. And he's like, so you're telling me that they'll let us out of here? He's like, absolutely, just open the gates or whatever. And then it like actually cuts directly from that guy's face to the dead version of that guy and he's just been flayed open.
Yeah. So Theon did what he was told. It was hammered into him, like you're pretending to be Theon Greyjoy. You're still Greek, but
Right.
I need you to play a role. And he does it. Almost can't pull it off. But
Yeah, it almost goes south, but it does work out. So great news for Ramsay. Sansa, this is also a really interesting thing. So kind of having a little trial here where Littlefinger is sort of on trial for what happened. Because, technically he's a person of interest here. It's not necessarily, I guess you could maybe call him a suspect, but they're like, what happened in there? Because we don't know anything about why she would commit suicide.
yeah, some of the lords of the area are definitely suspicious.
Yeah, and so they bring Sansa in as the only other possible witness. And Littlefinger's kind of constructed these lies about who she is, and she's like, "No, I've got to come clean." And he's, it's very interesting with Littlefinger because he obviously doesn't know what she's about to say. He just keeps like a very straight face, very Giancarlo Esposito of him.
Yeah, but you can tell on the inside.
But he's nervous.
Like,
yeah. This is a nerve-wracking moment for him
because she could absolutely
she could have sunk him right there.
Yeah,
but she doesn't.
Which
and
is
she does come clean about a lot of stuff. Like she comes clean that she's actually Sansa and all this and. But then there's enough, so there's like a lot of truth to what she says, but there's like that makes the lies more believable.
Yes, and she's in tears.
Yeah, right, because she's using actual emotion that she is feeling to fuel this lie.
Yes,
and so she clears his name basically, and a Littlefinger next scene he's immediately going to work, like gaining control of this whole fast. Yes. And he's like, we really need to see, it's really high time for Robin to, especially since now that he's like really the leader here. Like he really needs to learn how to do things. Really needs to learn how to ride a horse and sword fight and everything. And that Royce guy is like, absolutely, it's far past time for this time. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of all he's done so far. But he's building up his power there, basically. Mm-hmm. Okay, then we get this. I kind of forgot, I think, up until this, where I was reminded that it is actually Tywin that sends this note to Barris and Selmy, and it's got the hand stamp on it, where it's revealed that Jorah had been a spy for Daenerys. He was reporting to Robert back when he was king on Daenerys's whereabouts, and so he goes to Jorah first, and he's like, "I'm going to be taking this information to Daenerys." I think he's like basically kind of giving him a chance to like run for it, but he doesn't do that. And so she
net of him,
right, but she doesn't. She is in fact very upset about this and banishes his ass. And so
she should.
That's it. That's all we see from Jorah this season.
This man, that's all about. I'm just so loyal. He deserves it. It's very cathartic for me to see him. Yeah, I don't get kicked to the curb.
I would like to see a breakdown on the statistics of how people react to this.
I do think I'm in the minority.
I think you would probably be in the minority. Okay, anyway, but then we have some more great stuff with the Boltons. Everything is just going great for them. Because now he has Moat Cailin. And so he gets true to his word. He says, all right, Ramsay, you are Ramsay Snow no more. You are from this point forward, you are Ramsay Bolton.
Yes, Roose has legitimized him.
legitimize, and then they celebrate by arriving at their new home in Winterfell.
Oh,
Isn't that wonderful?
very sad.
Okay, so that's that. So then we are get Arya and the Hound arriving at the Eyrie, and they're like, "All right, finally, we're at the end of our long road here." And he's like, "Who is it at the comes to the bloody gate?" And the Hound says, "It's the bloody Hound." It's like, and Arya Stark is here to see her family. And he's like, "Well, then you have my condolences because Lysa Arryn died 3 days ago."
Yeah.
And then Arya just bursts into laughter because has no tact whatsoever or remorse.
She's just laughing hysterically because I mean, she got this close to the Red Wedding and then they were all killed. She just cannot catch a break.
Yeah.
And it's like she either break down and sob or
Right.
laugh hysterically, and she laughs.
She laughs. And inside the Eyrie, we have Littlefinger, and he's kind of starting to build his rapport with Robin.
Yes.
Doing it very well.
Obviously, we wish that they checked and like gone inside anyway, because then she would
because Sansa
reunited with Sansa.
Then again, who knows what Littlefinger would have done in that situation?
Yeah, that's fair.
That would have definitely been a variable he had not predicted.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, great stuff. Then we have this interesting scene, which I don't think, because like we've had several scenes where it's like Tyrion and Jaime, and this is a notable scene. I don't know that it's like a list-worthy scene necessarily, but it's that scene where they're like talking about the Beatles.
Oh yeah, I find it very interesting.
Yeah, I think you might like it more than I do, but
in terms of Gregor's
yeah,
psychology.
they're trying to get into Gregor's psychology, yeah. Because there was like this boy that they both knew growing up that would just like smash Beatles all day. And they like, and Tyrion's like he's like, why do you do that? He's like trying to investigate it, and they could never figure it out.
Yeah, well, the boy didn't explain himself.
Mm-hmm.
He was
because he was like
slow. She's like a compulsion to hurt them, and it's interesting how you could apply it to Gregor and to the Whites.
I think that's what they're going for. Because obviously we're going right from that to Gregor versus Oberyn.
I mean, I'm fascinated by it.
Right. But the main thing here is Gregor versus Oberyn, and this is it. It's the big fight. This is like really the payoff for the Trials by Combat because we never have another one. So this is like the send off for that concept.
Yes.
And it is the best one, and it is awesome. And we've never seen Oberyn fight or anything up to this point, so you don't really know like what his chances are.
Mm-hmm. But he's confident.
But yeah, he has no fear whatsoever. He said, drinking some wine. He's having a grand old time.
Yeah, his paramour is nervous.
Yeah, she's nervous, but he's like, no fear whatsoever. Like this is his life has been leading up to this moment.
Oh yeah,
like,
he is.
He's just thrilled,
ready.
And Tywin's there watching. Like it could not be more perfect for him. And so indeed, he kicks the shit out of the mountain in this fight, and like everybody's shocked. Like it cuts to Jaime, he cannot believe how he's just decimating this guy.
Mm-hmm. He's using a spear
because like nobody saw it coming really.
Mm-hmm.
And
he keeps saying like he's not gonna make it quick. He's gonna make him confess first.
Mm-hmm. And then he like it kind of ends where he like knocks him down and like even like puts his weight into it, like stabs it into his chest. Because I guess he's got to go through the armor and everything, and it's like it's done. It is over at this point. But he actually like pulls it back out, and he's like, "You can't die yet." And everybody's just watching. Like Tywin, of course, is being very stone faced, and he's like pointing at Tywin. He's like, "Who gave you the order?" And everything. And he's like just like you will confess or whatever. Say their names, and then the man like knocks him to his feet and. He actually does. He's like, says, yeah, I killed him and then I raped her or whatever. And then I smashed her head like this. And he like smashes his head open.
Yeah, and that is not good news for Tyrion.
And Tyrion is shocked. Jaime is shocked. Tywin is satisfied.
Elia,
the sand lady is losing her mind.
Yeah.
It actually like shows his crushed head. It's one of the more violent things we see.
Yeah, it's brutal.
And that's that. Like, it's like, Tyrion is sentenced to death, and
but the mountain lays back down. Like
the mountain lays back down. Like yeah. We don't know whether he's gonna survive or not,
but I mean, Oberyn clearly died first.
Yeah. He's definitely dead. Yeah, and so I just want to point out this was Brett's lowest moment for the show.
Yeah,
cousin Brett, who was watching the show. For Brandon, I think he was also sad about it, but I don't know what Brandon's lowest moment would be.
Yeah, we'll have to ask him.
It's honestly, that seems like, well, I guess we shouldn't say, but there's a character that's not been killed yet that will be killed later that seems to be the one that he's having the most trouble getting over. Which is not who you would expect.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Now, who I think of as his favorite, or at least his most unique favorite, has
yeah,
not
that
died yet.
that's
I think
true.
that's next
That
episode.
could I don't, he might not care for that.
We have 3
Yeah,
episodes
actor
left to
certainly
watch with
did.
him.
Anyway, that's the big finale for that episode, which was awesome. And then episode 9, if you can believe it, maybe even more awesome because this is just the whole episode devoted to the Battle at the Wall. It's called The Watchers on the Wall. It's what they gave the episode 9 slot, the prestigious Game of Thrones episode 9 slot. Previously we had Death of Ned Stark, Battle of Blackwater, Red Wedding, and now we have The Watchers on the Wall.
It's
And
arguably the
it
best
might
battle.
be better than even all those. Like I might say like I just think that this Battle of this Wall is just genius.
Really well
And
executed.
it doesn't start right away. Like it actually starts with Sam and John like up on the wall and they're on watch duty and kind of talking about their lost loves because they both think that they're dead.
I don't think we've seen John at all last episode.
I guess John doesn't think that she's dead, but she's dead to him in a way. And then
Yeah.
he thinks Gilly's dead. And then we actually get a cut to Gilly who's making her way to. Yes, well, she sees the wildlings down there. Just like, I'll just avoid that.
Yeah.
So I didn't see that down there. And then it's like we have a scene with like kind of the opposite, where it's Egret down there and she's making her railroad. She's all mad. And she's like, she actually tells him, she's like, none of you kill Jon Snow because he's mine. Or whatever.
Mhm. Which, there's a little bit of ambiguity there of obviously she is actually mad at him for abandoning her, but also that's a protective action.
Yeah, definitely. And then Sam, instead of going to bed, because John's like, just go to bed and I'll finish this watch. It's fine. And instead of going to bed, he goes to the library, and Maester Aemon comes in there, and he just thinks it's hilarious he's in that library. He's like, who else would be in here wasting these candles to read at night? And they have a little conversation about their lost loves, where Maester Aemon's talked about he was really into this woman once in his life. He didn't like talk about who it is, but maybe they'll go into that in that other show or whatever. But he's, Sam's like, well. Anyway, he's just very depressed. And he walks out of there, and who's at the gate but Gilly, of all people? And I think Pip is actually the person at the gate. And he's like, Pip, let him in.
Reunion
And
of
so
the only healthy couple in the whole show.
Gilly comes in, and he like hides her because obviously there's this big battle about to take place.
Yeah.
And but he's like, this is where they kiss for the first time. And
No.
like he says, wherever you go, I go, and all that.
He was very respectful about it,
Mhm.
brave, and they're just good beans.
And so there we go. Then it's the John's goes, he's up there on watch and whatever, and then like the big fire starts and it's time for the Battle of the Wall. So
This is where Alistair says, like, well, we really
yeah,
should.
he's up there also with him looking down at the fire. He's like, we should have sealed the tunnel as you suggested. And he's like, well, it's a tough decision either way, I guess.
Yeah.
And
He's
so
like, I know you don't like me, but
yeah.
blah blah blah.
So there's a lot of great stuff in this battle, which goes for a really long time. Can't hit everything here, but the main highlights is like Alistair goes down there to lead the battle, and he gets injured by Tormund actually, but he doesn't. He isn't killed by Tormund because Tormund like injures him and then like knocks him off of this scaffolding, so he does survive the fall. But
And he's basically like dragged off the battlefield.
yeah, he's dragged off the battlefield
because he wants to keep fighting.
And so while he's down there, like John has basically been forced to take charge up top because he really leaves that idiot in charge, and Janice Flint, he's just useless. So
well, he runs away, coward.
Yeah. So then John's like up
Or
there.
actually, isn't he tricked?
Yeah,
He's
Gran
like,
actually sends him down.
yeah, he's like, you're needed.
But then he does time.
He's like, okay. Like he doesn't really buy it, but he's like, yeah, I'll take it out.
He hides with Gilly.
Yeah, which how embarrassing.
Yeah, and so then John is like in charge up there. And he actually is like he's like directing stuff. He's like, timing the arrows. He's timing the barrel drops. He sees like that they're trying to get in with the giant. He sends Gren down there to hold the gate. That's also an epic moment where Gren holds the gate. And then eventually, like I guess Sam goes up there and he's like, it's not going well down there. It is like I think Pip's been killed at this point, actually by Egret.
No.
And he's like he fights his way up there. Like Sam kills a Thin while he's down there, but he gets up there and he's like, it's not going well down there. And John's like, all right, well, I guess I'll go down there. And so he leaves Ed in charge up top.
Yeah, it's this whole running thing where it's like, you have the wall, you have the wall. And it's like, how did I end up in this position?
Yeah, he's like, he's like, it's simple, have fire arrows. They get try the the mammoths again, drop the barrels. If if the climbers get too tall, drop the scythe. We don't know what that means, but he's like, drop the scythe on him. And then
We will.
he goes down there and leads jumps into battle, and it's like where we get like that awesome long sweeping shot where it's just does a circle of the whole castle black, and there's like battles going on like throughout the whole thing. It's like a bunch of characters that you actually care about. That's part of the genius of this battles because you care about both sides.
Yeah. And that kind of shot is impressive in a lot of the same ways as a shot in a musical movie where they've choreographed a bunch of stuff happening at once, and
Right.
you have to, have so many things working in harmony in order to get a shot
Right.
like that where everything's
Yeah, it's so awesome. It's one of the best shots in the show. And John is like super badass down there. And eventually he kills a Thin. He like actually loses his sword during the battle. I think it's like the Thin. He's not really named, but kind of the Thin that we have come to know and hate.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure he has a name, but
And
we
he
just
like
have he's dead.
knocks the sword away, but John ends up killing him with like a hammer to the head. It's a very brutal death. And he turns around and Egret's standing there, got a bow drawn. And it's like, oh man, this is what's gonna happen here? This is kind of like the big moment. But before we find out, Ollie of all people shoots her with an arrow.
Oh, and
She's
it's
killed.
emotionally brutal because you can't blame Ollie. He saw his parents get ravaged by wildlings,
Including
and
Egret.
threw away, and Egret was there, absolutely.
She kills like his father, I think, because she's like he dies from an arrow.
And Ollie's so proud of himself.
Yeah,
Like,
so proud. He's like, man.
he looks to
He
John.
looks at John and nods.
He's like his mentor. Like he looks up to her.
Mm.
John is taking him under his wing, and John is just heartbroken and just bows out of the battle. He just hugs her and holds her and cries, and
Man,
oh, our hearts.
pretty crazy. And then Tormund survives somehow, and they take him captive. There's also another little moment. It's not. It goes fast because of course they could never show the dogs or the wolves for more than like 2 seconds. But there's a moment where Sam lets Ghost out, and Ghost like jumps out there and kills some people.
Yeah.
Anyway, they take Tormund survives, takes him hostage, and then after it's all over, like John's like, well, we beat him back tonight, but he'll send more tonight. And he's like, I'm just gonna go out there and see if I can take him out. Talking about Manson. And he doesn't even take his sword. He like leaves his sword with Sam because he's like, well, the Lord Commander told me I couldn't lose his sword, so I'll just leave it with you.
Yeah, that is.
And Sam is
some
like,
man.
oh man, I don't know about this. He's like, it's a bad plan, but what plan do you have?
Yeah, so he's literally just gonna try to assassinate the
Mansander.
King
Because he's like, his idea is like, I think it's basically a suicide run.
Yeah.
And he's like, if Mance is killed, then they won't have the chain of command, and
He's the only person to ever be able to unite the wildlings.
right, because they're really just a bunch of tribes that have come together.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what he's thinking. He's like, we take off the head of the snake, and that'll be it. So that's his plan. That's the end of that episode.
He does not plan to get out of it alive.
No. But we still have the finale, and it does cut right back to Jon Snow, and he's walking into the camp unarmed. It's like, holding his hands up. Mance Rayder's there to greet him. But instead of going for the kill right away, they actually have share a drink. And they actually raise a glass to Egret, and they raise a glass to Grin, and they raise a glass to that giant that was killed.
Yeah.
And
Mance is always very cordial.
Yeah. And but it's kind of going south because like there's a moment where John is kind of eyeing his knife a little too long.
Yeah, and Mance reads him like a book.
Mm-hmm. And so like everybody in there is like, he's like, you might could do that. You really went for it, but obviously you wouldn't leave this room alive. They'd kill you slow. And so they're kind of at a standoff there, and then outside there's a commotion, and you cut outside, and here's like a bunch of horsemen. We have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
Gigantic army rolling in, and if you look close, you can see that they're carrying Stannis' banner, and they just absolutely cleave the shit out of these wildlings who have no chance against them because they have no horses or anything.
Yeah.
And so as usual, Stannis is right in front, so he rolls up with Davos, and tells Mance Rayder to kneel to him. He doesn't do that, and then he like questions Jon Snow, and he realizes that Jon is Ned's son,
Mhm.
and he's like, well, what do you think that your honorable father would have done to this man? basically John convinces him to take him captive.
Mhm.
That's kind of where we have to leave that little storyline.
Yeah. But it's payoff for Davos reading that letter.
Payoff for Davos reading the letter, payoff for Davos getting the forces in the Iron Bank.
Mhm. And then, of course,
And it is
convincing Stannis,
really it's Melisandre who convinces him, like, no, this is serious. We really do need to go address this.
Mhm. But it's an example of Stannis needing to protect his people, like be a
Sure.
king. Don't
Right.
just try to like gain the throne.
Right. So yeah, pretty cool moment for him. We have so all of episode 9 was devoted to that storyline. So now we were left on a big cliffhanger with the mountain and everything. So we go back to the King's Landing, and it is Qyburn with the mountain. He's beginning his experimentation. He's in the Grand Maester's laboratory, and Cersei basically just fires his ass, and he's like, "Get out of here!" It's Qyburn's laboratory now,
Yeah.
and Faisal is just disgusted by this.
Hmm.
And then she's, he's like, I think I could, I might be able to save. It's no guarantee, but I got some things I can try.
Yeah.
And
this is pretty much the reveal that Qyburn is the Dr. Frankenstein
yeah.
archetype.
And so she's like, well, what your experiments, will they weaken him? And he's like, oh no.
No.
And she's like, very well, do what you need.
Yeah.
And that's that. And then she goes and meets with Tywin, and this is a big confrontation between them because obviously this whole season, Tywin's plan has been for her to marry Loras Tyrell to further cement the alliance with the Tyrells, and he also wants her to start giving him some heirs as well.
Which was Sansa's dream come true, and Cersei's
she's just disgusted by this idea.
Yeah.
And so she's like, you know what? I'm not only am I not gonna do it, because like the whole time she's been like saying, yeah, I'll do it. We just got to get through Tommen's wedding first, and she kind of keeps putting things in front of her wedding. But there's really
like reluctantly agreed.
Right. There's really nothing else that she can like delay with at this point, though. Like the trial's over, son's married. There's really nothing else that's diverting their attention anymore. And so she's like, nah, well, I'm not going to do it. And if you want to try me about it, then I'll just come clean about the truth about Tommen and his heritage.
And he's like,
what are you talking about? Yeah. And she's like, just,
you do not know your children at all.
She's like, of course you don't know. If you would have opened your eyes for 2 seconds about what was going on in your house, we were right there in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, can't believe that she would do that. And she's like, just try me, basically. And then of course,
she's referring to her ancestors' relationship.
And then she goes and finds Jaime and sexes him up right there.
Yeah.
So to kind of prove a point, I guess.
Yeah, she's like back interested in him again because it's like a fuck you to her dad.
Right. So he's into that. He's all good as far as Jaime's concerned.
Yeah.
And so then we go back to Daenerys, and this is she's getting confronted with some tougher stuff at this time because at first she's like, oh, this dragon killed a lamb. She's like, oh, no problem, I'll give you your lamb back. And then that other guy's like, well, you killed my father, and he really wasn't that bad, and I'd like to bury him at least. And she's like, well, I guess I can let you bury him. And then like somebody comes in and is like, well, actually, I think I'd rather just be a slave again. And she's like, God, you got to be kidding me. And so she agrees to let him sign a contract with her former master, but only for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez, what could be worse than that? And then this guy comes in, and his child has been burned to death. Just the bones of a charred child.
And that is brutal. Like emotionally, you're like, oh my God, what do you do? Because in her head, the dragons are her children. Mm-hmm. And so it's when your child has killed another child, who do you prioritize? How do you give justice to this man?
Right.
And
we don't actually know what she decides to give the man, but she can't find Drogon, but she does chain up the other 2 dragons.
Yes.
Honestly, of all the scenes, that one is one of the most brutal in the whole show to me. Just like the sound design of those dragons when they're getting
breaks your heart because they didn't do anything wrong. It's like Lady getting killed when she didn't do anything wrong. It's like, and there's some parallel to the masters that I won't say they were innocent, but they were not in favor of killing those children being crucified like the children.
Right.
She is. But if one dragon did it, who's to say the others aren't also a danger to small children?
She can't actually punish Drogon because she doesn't know where he is. But
she knows she's been losing control all season.
Right, yeah. It's teased all the way back in the first episode.
And this, of course, has big metaphorical implications of her restraining her dragon side and choosing piece, but it's very hard for her. It's hard for the dragons. It's hard for me to watch.
Yeah, I really, I'm not a huge Sniz fan, but um, I do think like that. Obviously, her dragons are cool. Nobody would deny that. But like the sound design of those dragons, like the way they screech at her when she's like locking them in there, it's like
But she pushes through, and that says something about her, that she cares enough about the innocent. She truly does want to protect the innocent.
sure.
And this is an example of her actions hurting the innocent. And she's like, something's gotta give.
Yeah. Then the Night's Watch are honoring and burning their dead, and John visits Tormund, and Tormund's like, "Well, Ygritte belongs north of the wall, or whatever." And so John like hauls her carcass to that awesome tree out there and gives her a little wake. It's an amazing moment. This is actually the moment where he crossed over and became my number one character. The first time I was watching the show.
Yeah.
It's an amazing scene. And then it goes real fast though. And then we get the big payoff that we've all been waiting for.
Which is
Bran arrives at the home of the Three-Eyed Raven after all this time. But before they can enter, if you can believe it, some skeletons emerge from the snow. And we are all devastated by the fact that they killed Jojen Reed in their malice. But the children are there with their little fireball casting, Skyrim style, to bring the others into the shelter. And they survive.
And y'all, this last watch through, I had a revelation during this scene. As Jojen went down, you see a star falling.
The star falling.
Well, I mean, it's a like bomb or rocket or whatever. Fireball that I think the children are throwing, whatever. It looks like a star falling. And a theory that I have had for a couple years now was confirmed for me in a deeply, deeply satisfying way. You like see the reflection in Jojen's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot wait to run this by Andrew. I am so sure I'm right.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad that you were very satisfied by that. I was also very satisfied by the death of this horrible character. So one of the most satisfying deaths in the show, I have to say.
If you think you know what I'm talking about, give a huge spoiler warning in an email. Talk to me about it. Tell me how wrong I am. I would love to explain in 3,000 words why I'm absolutely right.
Okay. All right, so that's that. And then we have another payoff. This is an episode payoff. This is definitely the best finale episode that we've had, because most of the finales are kind of come downs after the episode 9 penultimate episode.
Yes.
Because those are where they really throw out all their big fireworks. And that's still kind of the case for this episode too. But man, it's a lot of payoff. So payoff here is Brienne finds Arya. And Arya is like kind of interested in her at first. Like they're kind of having a conversation, and the Hound walks up, and then that's where Pod, because like at first they just think she's just some girl, and then like the Hound walks up and Pod's like, "That's a Hound."
Yeah, and this is all show original.
Oh really?
This does not happen, but it is fun to see.
And then they basically like have a little standoff there, kind of Wild West style, where they're like arguing about who's going to take Arya.
Mm-hmm.
And they decide that they cannot decide that scenario with the War of Words, so they just cross blades, and it ends up being like just an absolutely brutal fight because they both lose their swords at one point. And they're just beating the hell out of each other.
But they're basically fighting like which one of them is going to get to protect Arya, and it's kind of a very sweet moment for the Hound because he's come a long way with this character where he doesn't just want to sell her for money anymore. He wants to protect her. He's like, how's she going to be?
Yeah, because really we don't even know what his end game is at this point. Like he doesn't really have one anymore. All her family keeps getting killed.
So this is the climax to their Joel Ellie arc.
Right. Yeah, definitely Last of Us. Very, very Last of Us. Yeah, honestly, like this season, I guess The Last of Us came out when season 3 was airing. So like it probably was on the minds of there had been some crossover there.
Interesting.
Of people that played The Last of Us and then watched this. But yeah, so they have this big fight, and Brienne wins.
She wins, and the Hound was winning against Gregor Clegane, who we just talked about is like unbeatable.
Right.
That to me says
Brienne number one.
Number one.
Okay.
Now, granted, when she was fighting Jaime, it was pretty close, and he had his hands tied.
Yeah, but he's like fallen far down the list now.
Well, obviously now there's no question.
Yeah. Anyway, so Arya's like kind of gone covert during this because she's not she's just not gonna trust Brienne. She's not gonna go with her. She doesn't even know who she is.
Yeah, if only she'd brought out the bread.
Yeah. Well, she tells her that she swore an oath to her father or to her mother, but the Hound kind of is, I guess, doesn't believe her because she's got the Lannister sword and she's got the Lannister colors and everything.
Yeah, that keeps coming back to bite her.
Right. So, so while Brienne is like looking for her, she goes back to the Hound. Arya goes back to the Hound, and the Hound's like, he thinks it's over.
Which this is the climax to Pod's fucking up arc. The thing
Sure.
about Squires, he loses track of
Right,
Arya.
right. He was like, "Oh, I was watching you, my lady. I thought you might need some help."
Oh.
And so she's like, "Well, really, she doesn't say anything. She's just like looking at him, and it's like a really kind of dark scene where he like kind of begs her to kill him.
Yeah.
He tries to remind her of all the reasons she hates him.
He starts antagonizing her, talking about how he killed the butcher's boy.
Yeah.
And she doesn't do it.
Mm-hmm. He says, I should have, that riot happened, or when that Battle of Blackwater with Sansa, I should have fucked her bloody, but it doesn't work because it's a should have. He didn't do it,
Mm-hmm.
And
she knows what he's doing.
Right. And so she just leaves him there.
Which is fascinating.
An ambivalent end to that arc. And then the payoff of all payoffs for this episode is Jaime like goes into the cell. It's like the night before Tyrion is to be executed. Jaime goes into his cell and like sets him loose, and
Here's
basically what Tyrion has been wanting him to do this whole time, and he finally does. And he's like, "All right, go up those stairs. Varys is waiting for you. You can flee to safety." And it's a really great scene. Like it's playing this really nice music. It's probably like a play on the Reigns of Castamere, but it's like a more, not even heroic, but just like a tender one, because it's like the love of these two brothers.
Okay.
And he goes to the stairs. Jaime like runs off because he don't want, he's definitely in the wrong here as far as the majority of the people in King's Landing are concerned. And Tyrion like looks up the stairs and the music just like fades out. And then he does not go up the stairs. And he goes up and he goes into like this trap door that I guess he knows about in King's Landing or in the capital. And he goes in there and he goes
to the Hands Tower.
Yeah,
he's
going to find his father. He goes into his bedroom and he doesn't find his father in there, but Shay's in the bed, and she wakes up and sees him, and so he has to like strangle her basically. She goes for a knife, and yeah.
So
kills her, and then he sees after he's done doing that, he like looks up and he sees Joffrey's crossbow. Takes the crossbow off the wall and he drags it down the hallway, and he finds his father in there in the bathroom, and he's like, Tyrion. It's like, what can he say? And so like they have this conversation where he's like, Tywin sort of says, I wasn't gonna let him kill you, it's just, let's just go back to the room and we can talk it over. And
which I think is probably true, but he could be full of shit.
I think it's not true. I think he absolutely was gonna let him get killed. And then Tyrion, he's basically like really wrecked now because he's just killed Shay, and Tywin keeps referring to her as a whore, and he says, "Call her a whore one more time." And then he does like just flippantly, like he's not even like he didn't say it right away. He's like the few sentences further in the conversation, and he like just casually refers to her as a whore, and he boom shoots him right there
on the toilet.
And he's like, in his dying breath, he's like, "You are no son of mine." And Tyrion's like, "I am your son. I've always been your son." And he like loads up another one and shoots him again. And it's now playing the Reigns of Castamere again, but it's a much darker version of the Reigns of Castamere. Yeah. And then he goes up the stairs. Varys is up there. He's like, "What the hell took you so long?" And I think he says like, "What have you done?" And then he like puts him in that crate. I wonder if it's kind of applied to be the same crate that he brought that other guy in on that cut him all those years ago. It's very, if not, it looks exactly the same. And he puts him in the crate and he's like shipping him off. We don't know where he's shipping him. And then Varys is gonna like walk away, and then he's like, "You know what? I think I'm gonna go up in that ship as well."
Yeah, he's kind of
because he's obviously culpable for this action.
Mm-hmm.
And now Tywin has been killed. So he goes up there and he leaves with him, and that's the end of that. And the only other thing we get in this season is Arya also getting on a ship, and she gives this Braavosi guy that coin. She says, "Valar Morghulis."
The one that Jack and Kagara gave her.
And off she goes to Braavos. And that is the final shot. Season 4.
That's it. I will have more to say when we talk about the Storm of Swords.
Okay. But yeah, overall, like pretty really that second half of that season in particular, like starting from the trial and on. But you know, you can't even really nail it down to that because obviously episode 2 is the Purple Wedding. So it's just banger season, I think. Unquestionably the best season up to this point. Now I have my top moments. Season 4 Game of Thrones. I have 19. More than
Wow.
double what we had seasons 2 and 3. More than we had in season 2 and 3 combined.
Okay, let's hear it.
Now I will say the bottom ones are pushing the boundaries of what I thought were notable, but I decided that they were list worthy. Number 19 is The Moot with Mance. So this is in the finale when Jon ventures unarmed into Mance's camp after the battle at the wall, which, like we talked about earlier, was basically a suicide run to kill him and scatter his forces. But instead, they end up toasting the fallen from the battle, and things are kind of falling apart for the end. But then Stannis shows up, leaves the hell out of everybody.
Okay. I mean, Santa showing up is pretty
Yeah, it's all that stuff just put together. Makes it a pretty cool moment. And then 18 is from episode 5, which is Mandrant. Which, you know, I wouldn't have thought at the outset would be one that I would think is worth putting in, but I just thought that guy that plays the Hound was so funny.
It was a nice moment of levity.
When he learns that Syrio, her idol, was killed by Marandrant of all people. It's like, God.
Yeah.
How good could he have been? Number 17 is from episode 3. It's a rare Dario Naharis moment
Oh my goodness.
on this list. Might be his only one.
Yeah.
But it is where he just humiliates the Masters of Marine by destroying that guy in like one swipe of his sword.
It's like the pissing contest,
Mhm.
literally.
Yeah. And I don't know. I thought that was pretty funny. And yeah, that was a cool like visual of like that guy that stuck out to me. It was like that guy coming out of the big wall behind him and then rushing out on his horse. Dario
Mhm.
Naharis just standing there. It's pretty cool. 16. It's a interesting way to put it. You could call it Yara's failed attempt at saving Theon. I called it Ramsay's lovely evening.
Yeah, that's better.
So it's like while she's coming in, it's like playing this epic music, probably playing the Theon slash what do they call themselves? Ironborn. The
yes.
Ironborn music. It's playing in the background. But like it's interspersed with her coming in on the boat and looking very triumphant is Ramsay with Miranda just having a grand old time.
He's
And
sick.
he is just it's like that's part of what's so great about it is like something about I don't know if that character would work as well if he didn't have like such and I don't know, maybe they're contacts or something, but he has just like those bright blue eyes.
Hmm.
And that makes him look crazier, I think.
Hmm.
Like the way that he does his like because like he plays into it with like the way he does his eyes, you know, they're always like open wide and looking crazy.
Yeah.
And like I think that adds to his character because he's definitely doing that, like that Ramsay Snow euphoric look
Hmm.
when he's in bed with her. And then the next time we see him is whenever he's busting into the room where Theon is and Yara's there, and he's like still shirtless because obviously he was just in bed.
Yeah.
And he's got blood all over him, and he's got like the same look in his eyes as he was whenever he was having sex.
Mm.
But he's having even more fun even than that, you know.
Yeah.
And he was like, I thought this was gonna be a boring evening.
Interesting
And
parallel.
it's something that one of those things that I probably wouldn't have thought was that great the first time just because I was so disgusted with Ramsay Bolton. But
Of course, as you should be.
in hindsight, and particularly watching with Brandon because he's such a connoisseur of villains,
Hmm.
I definitely enjoyed him the most this third watch through.
Hey.
And that was one of the ones that stuck out to me.
You know, I don't know what color his eyes are in the books, but I think they're similar to Roos's. And I know Roos's are like really pale.
Right. Yeah, they do. His eyes in the show are very pale as well. So yeah, great job from that guy. 15 is what I call Two Swords, which is pretty straightforward.
Oh, sure.
Which is what it's literally the opening moments of the season. That it's not moving the plot forward in any real way. It's just a cold open. It's before they even do the map, and it's just blasting the rains of Casimir.
The
And
reforging of the.
Tywin is melting down that sword. It's like a very satisfying visual anyway, just of like of the lava and everything flowing into the swords and forming the swords. But
Yeah.
and then like to put salt on the wound, like he's got like the carcass of Grey Wind and he burns it.
Ugh,
It's just like, man,
rude.
it's kind of his. It's great visual storytelling, but it's also just like kind of his victory lap. Like he's on top for a big chunk of the season, but like right there, I mentioned that lunch earlier is probably like his actual peak, but right there he's just like feeling so victorious, and then like 10 episodes later he's dead.
Yeah. I say rude. It's probably, I mean, it's better than what Joffrey would have done with that.
Sure.
First.
Yeah, he's
Might be
like,
for the best.
yeah, he's not gonna be making any parade out of it. He's just like done with this.
I mean, the head
Throw it in
already has been.
Throw it in the fire. Yeah, no, but that
paraded.
wasn't from him.
Sure.
Okay, number 14 is the Battle of Craster's Keep. It's a fun little 15-minute sequence where Jon Snow comes in and they kill those guys. I've already talked about how I love the visual of him closing the door. And, really he struggles with them. It's not like he just like whoops his ass or anything, but gets the job done.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that. 13, I have another short scene. It's over, but it comes and goes very fast. Egret's funeral.
Oh, yeah.
But like we talked about earlier, it's like that is even though it's a small moment, it is the moment that cemented him as my number one Game of Thrones character. It's just like it's all visual. There's no, and of course they're blasting some great music, but he doesn't say anything or anything. It's just you see him building it. First you see him dragging her out there. He builds it. He burns it. He doesn't even like really even look at it. Man, it's really great.
Poor guy. The only consolation there is that the actors got married and
Right.
had a baby.
Number 12, I was gonna call it Littlefinger's trial, but then I decided, you know what, we'll call it Littlefinger's first trial. Not to be confused with another one that he might have in a later season.
Okay.
But this one goes much better for him. He's being questioned by the remaining leaders of the Vale, the sudden death of Lysa Arryn, and they're pretty suspicious of him. But then it's where Sansa comes in and basically saves his ass. It really goes to bat for him and convinces them that he's innocent.
Yeah.
Which is incorrect, but and then like I mentioned, like next scene, literally no gap between them. The next scene, he's already building influence to take the hold for himself. So really didn't take him long to start getting his roots in.
It's an interesting Sansa moment, and it's
really
one
great.
of the first where she starts to play the game. She's learning how to lie. I mean, she's watched some of the best.
Yeah, as usual, making a drastic mistake, but
well,
it's a great moment for him. Number 11, I think you'll know it immediately from what I called it, which is your brother is dead. So not a long scene again, but exceedingly entertaining. Where Tywin starts, Joffrey's might not even be cold yet, and he's immediately grooming Tommen for rule under his watchful eye.
Yeah, we quote this one all the time.
And quizzes him on what makes a good king, and they go through some different options. And it is notable for sure that Tommen says holiness first. And he says, Well, the Blessed was holy and pious.
Yeah, it's such a fun, like, really introduction to Tommen.
Yeah, foreshadowing for sure about where that character is going to go. But also, yeah, like such an entertaining scene for this, not really because of him, but it's very entertaining scene for his debut,
And I definitely think this comes.
And it probably is the debut. I don't mean to catch off, but it probably is a debut for Tommen as this actor.
Oh, really?
I mean, he might be in the background somewhere.
He's surely that one at the wedding.
Sure, but I mean, no one even notices he's there at the wedding, which
is great.
That's not what you're looking at.
What was I saying?
Oh, I don't know. But well, I was just gonna say as he goes through several options, like he says strength, he says multiple things. Finally, he arrives on wisdom, which Tywin agrees is what makes a good king, and his definition of wisdom is listening to what Tywin Lannister has to say.
Yes, well, his advisors, and that's what I was going to say, was that this comes back to bite the Lannisters when Tywin is gone, and this transfers on to someone else.
Yeah,
that has worse, well, I won't say worse intentions, but worse intentions for the Lannisters.
Yeah, definitely worse intentions for the Lannisters. But sadly, like we talked about before, is we're just about to be exposed. See, might have got even higher if we were exposed to Tywin giving Tommen the birds and the bees talk.
Gosh.
But instead, we kind of
If only.
Yeah. So number 10, I have.
Oh, and just to go back, that next scene
Oh,
is
Jesus. We don't need to talk about
not
that.
the books.
That is
It's
not.
horrendous. It's the
We're
worst
talking
part
about
of the
We're talking about
season.
the best scenes.
Okay.
Number 10. I didn't expect this to go as high as I did, but it really is entertaining, and it's just Oberyn's debut. It's really kind of like 3 scenes in one. Or I guess you could just say 2 scenes, but like it's Oberyn in there in the brothel. He's having a grand old time, and
It's
then
the brothel scene.
and then he hears, well, yeah, but that's mostly because of what happens outside of sex. He hears these Lancer guys like laughing in another room. I can't remember exactly what it is that triggers him to go in there, but it might be singing the Reigns of Castamere or something. He goes in there, and we don't really know anything about him at this point. Like he hasn't been introduced. We've heard of him, I guess, but we don't know that he has like this agenda against them, really. And so like just having Lannister guys in there talking about how great the Lannisters are is enough to set him off. And like this guy's kind of talking back to him, and he just stabs him through his hand. And then like the other guy's like about to pull a sword. He's like, you might want to take your friend as soon as I take this knife out. He's really going to be bleeding quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then like
TikTok.
and then Tyrion like walks in right as this is going on. And so that's like his introduction to Oberyn as well.
Yeah, establishes the stakes for how Tyrion handles this.
Right. And then like they take it outside, and that's whenever he's like basically like lays out everything on the table about why he's there. Or well, he's there for the wedding, but like why he wants to be there. And he's like, tell your father I'm here and everything's wow. So in terms of just character introductions, it's hard to do it better than that.
It's pretty great.
Okay, number 9. You might be surprised this would be as high as it is. It's also from episode 1. I called it Chicken Fight. So not the most auspicious of names, but this is where Arya and the Hound come upon Polliver and those Lannister men harassing this guy and his daughter in this house. Yeah. And they're talking about the reason I call it Chicken Fight is because they go in. Which is all Arya. Like Arya's the one that makes him go in there. And the Hound's just like kind of along for the ride at that point. But of course they recognize him, not her. And so they're sitting down at this table, and Polliver comes up and he's like, tell them they should come with them or whatever. And Hound's like, why don't you give me one of those chickens? And then like it kind of starts being revealed that they're going outside. Like he's like, why don't I trade you a chicken for a go at her. Talking about Arya or whatever. And
yeah.
Like, it kind of keeps escalating, and he's like, well, maybe I'll just have to have every damn chicken in this place. And he's like, they're all kind of looking at him by that point. Because, there's like 5 guys in there. And like, it kind of comes, the final line before it all breaks down is he's like, you really going to die for a chicken? And then the Hound like says, Someone is. Damn. And then they, slaughter all those guys in there. It's so awesome.
Arya's first crossing someone's name off her list, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. And, probably made extra satisfying by the fact that she gets her sword back. So yeah, huge scene, I think, for their relationship, but also just the Hound is just so entertaining in there with his dialogue with that guy.
Now, I haven't heard yet scene I thought was going to be lower. So either you really respect the scene as much as it deserves to be respected, or there is a glaring omission in this list.
Okay.
Involving a certain Tyrell and a certain person of Tarth.
You're talking about Brienne of Tarth?
Yeah.
I don't know, that just comes and goes so fast.
Introduction with Olenna.
Well, it's just a brief little meeting.
Okay, so your list is garbage.
Mostly she talks to Marjorie. She doesn't, like, Olenna's just kind of...
Oh, yeah, Marjorie, such a terrible character. I wouldn't want to see that.
It's just Olenna being like, you are just the greatest.
Just literally my top 3 characters from the show.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear that list would, that would be high on your list.
Honorable mention, I mean...
No, it's not. I didn't even consider it.
Didn't...
No.
I'm disappointed.
Okay, sorry for your disappointment. Number 8 does have something to do with Brienne, however. And it's Brienne versus the Hound in episode 10.
Yeah, that's cool too.
Which we talked about earlier, but it's truly a brutal fight. Like, these are 2 characters that we both, like, the audience likes both of these characters at this point. So it kind of is brutal in a way, because they're just beating the crap out of each other. You really don't want either of them to die.
Mhm.
They are, kind of like what you said earlier. You could argue these are like the two most badass fighters in the series at this point. Like they're both at the top of their game.
Yeah.
Um, and they're going at it like full tilt.
Hmm.
And it is pretty awesome. But as noted, Brienne does emerge victorious. And then it takes like this really dark turn after that, where uh, he's just like laying there dying, and he's literally by the end begging Arya to kill him,
Hmm.
and she won't do it. Anyway, it's a very memorable scene, if nothing else. Okay, number 7. You might think that this would be higher. I was a little bit surprised that I put it as low as I did,
Okay.
but it is the Mountain and the Viper. Oberyn
Mm.
versus the Mountain. Because in terms of just like memorable scenes from season 4, it's definitely very. Of course, it's number 7, so it's still pretty good. But I think that's probably. I don't think it's like really a knock against this scene. I think it's just there's that many scenes above it that I think are even better. But it is a really, I think, memorable send off to Oberyn himself, just because he was such an entertaining character. He was only in season 4. He's probably in 10 scenes total.
Mhm.
But just about he's got a little bit of like a Tywin Lannister quality to him, where it's just like every single scene that he's in, he just absolutely steals it. It's like he is the one that you think of, or you are the one that you're most entertained by during that sequence that he's in almost every case.
Yeah.
So I think because of that, because you haven't had him for that long, and because he's so entertaining, that makes his death of the Hand of the Mountain so disappointing for people, because it's like it's a new character that you're just isn't already like on the level of like your favorites,
Hmm.
and he's
It's
gone.
gone too soon.
Right. And so I think I think it's ultimately the right move for the story, but it is uh it's another bold move for him to be killed off that fast, but also just because he's so entertaining, I think it makes it so painful for people.
It also
Um
had to happen narratively
yeah,
because we
yeah.
already had Bronn step up and win the trial by combat for Tyrion as
Sure.
a
Well, yeah,
Grand
Tyrion has
Mountain
made it out
Speaker.
of, well, I guess depending on how you look at it, the good, well, good guy is maybe not the right way to put it, but like the person that you were pulling for won both of the trial by combats before, because he had. Well, I mean, I guess you might not, you might have been pulling for Beric Dondarrion over the Hound, but you don't really know who he is. Whereas you know who the Hound is by then. He's a very established character.
Well, and the Hound's different because he's fighting for himself, whereas this is the second trial by combat for
Right, and
Tyrion
Tyrion got it
with
off the
someone
first
that
time.
volunteered last second.
Sure. But at the same time, even though it is tragic, it's very satisfying for until he dies, because he's
Oh
kicking the
yeah.
he's kicking the Mountain's ass, and really just systematically getting his revenge. Like everything is going perfect for him. Like this is the moment that he'd built up in his mind for probably how long has it been since she was killed? 20 years.
Oh yeah.
So like everything is coming together for him, which is just awesome. And then that also I think kind of makes it even more painful to have it snatched away at the end.
Mhm. Oh, something we didn't mention was that his spear was absolutely poisoned. Like,
Sure.
even if he lost, which he did, but even if he lost without already mortally wounding the mountain was not making
Yeah,
it
he was
out
not going to
alive.
make it if not, and I guess we won't say whether he does or not, but if he does, it's all Qyburn. It's only because of Qyburn's experiments that he has any hope.
Yeah. So that's part of um, the confidence going in is
Right.
like this has been he's been dreaming of this moment for
Hmm.
20 years.
And I think it's interesting too because as I've kind of talked about how it got you, how they manipulated the audience into just really falling in love with this character and being heartbroken when he loses. It really does a good job of what I think the books do a really good job of, and I think this is another strength of video games as well. And there's some pretty specific examples I can think of, but where they really sink you with a character in the story, and like understand their mindset and like feel the same way as they do in particular. I think of like, I won't spoil it here, obviously, but the beginning hours of Last of Us Part 2, they do a very good job of that. And you are 100% in sync with Tyrion here. You're on the exact same arc that he is. He's like feeling nervous about his
Hmm.
chances. It's going very well. He's excited and hopeful about the outcome,
Hmm.
and then a little bit nervous again because he's getting a little too cocky, and then
Yeah.
devastated when he loses. It's like you and Tyrion are 100% aligned with that, you know.
Mhm.
So that's done very well, and so like you can almost imagine that as if that was like a Tyrion POV in the book.
Yeah.
You would be right there with him. So very good stuff in that scene. And it's only number 7. Can you imagine?
What's next? What we got
Number 6. This is a great example of a scene that I would not have expected to put above it. But like analyzing them, very close in alignment to each other because they're in back-to-back episodes. I have Lysa's fall out of the moon
Wow.
door. I think part of what I love so much about this scene is that it is actually a very satisfying scene because she's just such an unlikable character,
Oh.
but it's uncomfortably satisfying in a way because you
Mm.
just saw Littlefinger kiss Sansa.
Yeah.
It's like this is a very icky feeling, but like at the same time, it's just like, yeah, throw her through that door, man. You know what I mean? And it like I don't know, like Littlefinger's whole like framing in that shot as well, like where he's almost like framed as like this, even though we literally just saw him doing a despicable act. He's almost framed as like the hero coming in here, like breaking open the doors and being like, unhand her, you know
Well,
what I
he
mean?
does save her.
Right, right,
Like,
right. And I mentioned earlier that I really love that shot of which I didn't notice until this last time looking at it, but that shot of where he says, I've only ever loved one woman," and it cuts to Sansa looking up because she's like, like kind of in fear of what he's about to do because she knows that it is not Lysa Arryn,
mhm.
you know. I don't know. I love that just that one tiny little shot of Sansa's face. And so like I said, he's awful and still obviously a threat to Sansa long term. But seeing him get rid of just this nothing to like about her character, is just, and also for it to be through the moon door is very poetic as well because she's been threatening people with the moon door since the episode or season 1.
Oh, absolutely. That's how she had to go, no question.
Hmm. And yeah, I think I don't know. I guess we can talk about it here. But one of the things that I was thinking about with um, Littlefinger's relationship with Sansa is very interesting. I mentioned earlier that it is uh, very realistic, and I think um, part of the things that you have to imagine is going through his head is like when he knew Catelyn, it was when they were kids, right? Like, and when they
Yes.
were teenagers. So you have to imagine that his idealized memory of Catelyn, she probably looks something like Sansa right now. It's not like the
Oh,
version of Catelyn
absolutely.
that he finally reunited with many years later. Right.
Yes.
And so like this is like the girl that he's been dreaming about in his head for the last however many years looks like Sansa now.
Yes.
Right.
Because it's like, uh, a little bit like so he knew Catelyn a lot better than Robert knew Lyanna, of course.
Mhm.
But it does remind me a little bit of Robert having this idealized version of his head of what Lyanna was. Like Catelyn is not the person that Littlefinger
Sure.
remembers. But he can project all of that onto Sansa, who
Mhm.
is this new, younger, more blank slate that he is
Right.
molding.
Right. Yeah. And now, yeah, that's a huge difference as well. It's like they're not on an even playing field anymore. And
Yes,
so he can sort of almost try to shape her into being who he wants her to be.
yes. And of course, completely dependent on him. And
Mhm.
he has a little bit of a hero complex with
Sure.
her. Like he loves saving her because
Mhm.
that puts her even more in his pocket.
Right. And then he also probably was very happy to be rid of Lysa Arryn, so that had to be
Oh,
very
sure.
that
When
had to
she
be
was
very
not long for
satisfying.
this world anyway.
Sure. But it's like it's the culmination. This scene is, and the one where where Sansa gets him off, is a culmination of his this arc that we didn't even really know was his arc until I guess you could say maybe season 3. You could kind of get an inkling of it where he's trying to take her with him whenever he leaves.
Yes.
But yeah, I like it. It's very slowly rolled out because when the show starts, you have no idea what it's going for, other than he
Mhm.
would like to have more power.
Yes.
And so like to have that kind of coalesce in this, and in a scene where like I said, it's satisfying, but also kind of uncomfortably satisfying. It's very,
Yes.
really loved it.
Don't you wish we got more of them in the Erie learning,
But,
doing political
perhaps,
machinations?
yeah, yeah. I definitely like them together for sure. Like it, and it's just a very interesting dynamic. But okay, number five, more of a scene that you would probably expect to see up here on the top five of this season, but only number five is the Purple Wedding.
Mm.
With the legendary scene, which obviously Joffrey, like we said earlier, is acting as monstrously as possible
Oh yeah,
in the lead up to it,
just
in order to make it as satisfying as possible for basically Olenna's covert version of the Red Wedding.
yeah, for us to watch this child die horribly and feel great about it.
Right. And like for the weapon to be planted on Sansa, of course, unbeknownst to everybody, is highly entertaining.
It's a little bit symbolic of how everybody has been using her in King's Landing, and she's been
Definitely.
kind of unknowing of how much of a tool she is.
Yes. So it's a very important, obviously, sequence for this season. It's basically the inciting incident for a lot of the main thrust of season four, which is the trial of Tyrion. And really by any stretch, one of the best uh, sequences in the show. I think it's also an appropriate send off for Joffrey, like we talked about earlier. He's definitely one of the most hated characters in TV history. So it's the fact that it's a painful death. He doesn't just like it's not just like a simple quick assassination. Like he really is in pain
Yeah.
for like a solid minute or minute and a half, whatever it is.
And there's so many people there. It's like right in front of
Yeah, that's true.
everybody.
Very public as well.
Getting to speculate like before even though it's not a long time before like I still remember speculating and then how fun it was the first time I went back and rewatched that scene and saw Olenna and like knowing everything. It
Sure.
just comes together so beautifully.
Yeah, it does. And I will say that the one thing that I think is working against it is its close proximity to the Red Wedding, because it can't quite be on the level of the Red Wedding in the sense that happened first, and then also you had more than one very, very important main character dying at once. And so since it's only like 3 episodes later, and I understand for TV viewers they really had like a year to process that, but if you're just watching through the show, it's like it comes so fast after the Red Wedding that I don't think it can hit quite as hard as if it would have been first or whatever.
Well, it's going for a totally different emotion.
Yes, but it is a similar assassination at a wedding.
Okay.
That even has a color associated with it.
And that is a show exclusive. I don't think the poison turns him purple in the books. I think that's it.
Sure.
Maybe the gem is still purple, but anyway.
But when you hear about like when people talk about the legendary scenes of Game of Thrones, they're 99% are going to mention the Red Wedding before they mention the Purple Wedding.
Well, sure.
Number 4, I have Tyrion's Revenge. The final act of what I would argue is peak Tyrion, who definitely is never the same after season 4. I think we certainly agree on that.
Nor should he be. This should be.
Yeah. I will say, yes, that is fair to say, because like I think obviously killing his father has to weigh on him at some point, but killing Shay at the same time, and that is a more brutal death because it's like right there. He's right there confronted with it, where it's a strangulation death. And because of like how much she meant to him, he should be different after that. He is appropriately different.
That's where I disagree.
Oh, okay.
I think he should be much darker from here on out.
Yeah, I hear you on that, but like the fact that he's not like this wisecracking, like the lighthearted Tyrion that we've seen. It's like season 2, when you think about Tyrion in season 2, like he's a lot more of like a fan favorite type character than what he becomes later. And it's definitely more entertaining in the early seasons than in the later seasons.
Yes.
But I think that is appropriate.
Yes, I agree. As far as how they actually changed his character.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. Like you would prefer him to go down a darker route. But at the same time,
I think it's just because people love Peter Dinklage so much. They were just like, we can't.
But at the same time, I would counter that this is him getting his revenge kind of on his father. Like this is a guy that has basically mistreated him his entire life.
Yeah, but he's
And
not just mad at his
he
father.
kills him. Yeah,
He
that's
wants to
true.
see the whole city
That's true.
burn.
That's true. He does say that. But I think that it isn't unrealistic for him to realize that killing his father did not bring him any joy. And so for that to I don't know, for him to really think about how that made him feel, that action.
Sure. Well, I will say around this point is definitely where book Tyrion and show Tyrion are entirely different characters.
Yeah.
And there is
Well, that's interesting.
a lot more going on here with book Tyrion that they should never have omitted. And it's absolutely baffling that they did. I have no idea why they did it. But it certainly weakens this. And so it's one of those things where it's great until you know what it could have been. And then you're like, oh, why? Why?
One thing that I really like about it is that it actually starts as a very heartfelt kind of brotherly love scene with him and Jamie, where Jamie is like really sticking his neck out to save him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's again, like I said with the music, they really do a good job of ramping that up. But like that, it's very artfully shot where they frame it with that kind of stairway to heaven type thing where it's like all he's got to do is go up there and escape. And I think there's even like a light coming down from it.
Yeah.
And then for him to like go up to it, look at it, and turn away, and it goes down like this dark passage.
Yes.
It's really awesome.
And again, if they had gone like with a really dark route from this character from this point forward, super thematically resonant. But he just goes down the dark pitches for a minute and then he takes the light side. But I agree, his relationship with his brother and this kind of culmination of essentially Jamie standing up for Tyrion in a
Which
way
he has
where
done the whole
he's-
time, but
yeah,
this
he's also
is
been
where
the
he's
only one in
really
the family that would.
But this is where he's really sticking his neck out for him the most.
Definitely their relationship is crucial here.
Mhm.
And I can't wait to read it with you.
Number 3, this is another one that I think most people would not put this above Mountain versus the with Oberyn. I guess they call him the Viper, but yes, Oberyn versus Mountain. And it is where Oberyn reveals that he's going to face the Mountain. I like that scene even more, significantly more even, I would say. And I think this is the best acting from Pedro Pascal as this character. Because the character he's always, even though he's definitely got this dark edge to him, he's always sort of lighthearted in a way. Like he's always kind of cracking jokes and like he's got like this levity to him, but there's no levity to him in this scene at all.
Yeah.
And Tyrion at this point is like basically completely giving up hope, and Oberyn walks in there and he doesn't immediately tell him that he's gonna fight for him. He actually like tells this story about where like him and Elia went to Castle Rock when they were children. And so they meet Cersei and they're the whole way there they're hearing about like this freak that has been born to, because I guess word travels is like a kind of a surprising thing that Tywin Lannister would have had like this freakish child. And like it's all built up like he's like some sort of monstrous. He's got a tail and he's got like claws and stuff. And so like they and then like they get there and they want to see him immediately. And Cersei's like, oh, well, you'll see him. Just wait. And so like they have to like keep waiting. And so they built up the anticipation even more. And then they finally see him.
And he's disappointed.
Yeah, and he's just like, it's just a baby. He's like,
But
he says, he's like, we didn't even try to hide our disappointment.
But Cersei truly does see him as this grotesque monster that killed their mother, and she is very cruel to him in this moment. She pinches the poor helpless baby, and that's
but Jamie comes in and stops her. And it's like I talk about how Oberyn's acting is very good, but Tyrion's acting is also exceptional. See, he's like in tears hearing this story back.
Yeah,
because obviously he had no memory of that. And then like at the end, Oberyn's like, kind of reveals that this is everything that he's been waiting for. It's like this chance to go up against the Mountain. And so like Tyrion just like has this unbelievable new ray of hope, and like this is the culmination of Oberyn's path this whole time, which is this quest for justice against the Mountain. And so like he finally has it laid out for him. And like, yeah, maybe he was gonna hold back and see if this whole thing with Tywin was gonna work out, where Tywin was gonna arrange a meeting for him, but now he doesn't even have to. Like he could be guaranteed meeting with him in a battlefield right here.
Yeah.
So it's just, so awesome. It's such a high for like the highest peak of that character, and it's a high for the season, which of course also contributes to making his death tragic. But
Yeah.
man, I just think that scene, in general with Game of Thrones, not in totality, as we'll see with perhaps a higher pick, but in general with Game of Thrones, I find that I really like these more quiet dialogue scenes more than like a lot of like the more action heavy scenes, unless it's like a really awesome one.
Yeah.
And this is a good example of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but number 2 is the trial of Tyrion Lannister. So this is in episode 6.
Everyone loves courtroom drama.
Yeah, I do, and I particularly love courtroom drama, and so like this is a really good one, and it's also if that last one was sort of the peak of Oberyn's character. I think this is kind of the peak of Tyrion's character in a lot of ways, where everything that he's done leading up to this point is turned against him, and it's also just kind of a referendum on the character as well, because it's just kind of reminding you of all the things that he's done up to this point. And then like for it to go as poorly as it does, and for him to have like this out essentially with just confessing, I guess, and being sent to the wall, and for him to like just not accept that after obviously Shay is what sets him off, but for him to just like kind of take the path of violence, I guess, even though it is more likely to not work out for him.
But he knew the other way was exactly what his father wanted.
Yeah, he does talk about that, where like it felt good to take that away from him. And just like the anger really pours out of him, and he directs it at not just his father and Cersei, but everybody in the room. Man, it's
who haven't
amazing
appreciated it. Like he feels very unappreciated for everything he's done for the city.
Yeah,
they're out for blood. Like they have been talked into seeing him as a monster, and so he says, "I wish I was the monster that you all think I am."
Sure.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's his best scene. And then number 1, which encompasses a lot, but the battle at the wall.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that was gonna
I think it's maybe like watching a sequence is hard to fathom, even though I mean it's only early, it's fairly early on, but that Blackwater battle is so unbelievably good. But I think that this one tops it. And it's not even particularly close. As much as I love that Blackwater battle, it's just the Blackwater is maybe a little bit flashier with the pyrotechnics, and obviously Stannis is badass in it, while Tyrion is also badass on the other side. The Battle of the Wall, I think, is a little bit more focused in on the people that are fighting, and kind of like the sacrifices and tragedies that are unavoidable when people you like on both sides are fighting to the death. And then it's also just like, if you have not been convinced up to this point, it is like kind of the coming out party of Jon Snow, where like I think he just really kind of takes the reins of the show at this point, and really does not let up for at least the next season. And you could argue even past that, but it's like he is just on fire at this point as a character, I think. And this battle has a lot to it, and then just like the way they shoot it as well. I talked about that large sweeping shot that always sticks with me of the way they did this battle. But I think it is even though obviously we still have some big battles to come in the show, I think this is I have a hard time believing I would put any of them above this one.
Yeah, it's really well done. It breaks your heart when Pip goes down. It breaks your heart when you see Gren is held.
I know, but it's awesome at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely, in a really well done way. And then obviously Ygritte is a huge gut punch mixed with Ollie, like, and he's so
very proud,
like, yeah, very like looking.
That's very satisfying for him.
The look of approval from Jon.
And he doesn't get it.
And he does not get it.
Yeah.
Something you didn't include that I wondered if it was an oversight was the reveal that Olenna was the one that killed Joffrey. Oh,
yeah, I could see that. I think part of what hurts that reveal is just like they almost do it and then don't for like 2 or 3 times before they actually like lock in. Yes, I was, like, she confirms like that she was the one to do it. Like, it's kind of implied that she did it, almost immediately afterward, where like she's talking to Marjorie and she's like, "Well, that's a lot better, isn't it?" And then you have
But
the
that
little
just could be her being
sure,
blunt
sure,
and
it could
not
be, but
caring
then you have
about them.
Littlefinger talking about it, then you have Littlefinger talking about it again. I don't know. I think some of the, I guess what you would call the build up for the reveal ends up taking away from the reveal. But maybe that's like more on like a rewatch thing. Maybe if it was my first time watching it, I might rank it a little higher. But I mean, I think it's awesome that she is the one behind it. But I don't know if there's like a singular moment to really pull out of it that's list worthy.
Okay. Well, I do. It is also interesting that Marjorie's a little bit like it was done for her in a lot of ways, but
Well, she's
she's a little
shocked.
horrified.
She's surprised, but
This is still her
I think
role model.
I think ultimately she's pretty happy about it.
It works out for her
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
I think
Okay.
that she was definitely better at controlling Joffrey than anyone except maybe
Well,
Tywin.
she does say that, and then she's like, "Well, you'll have a much easier time with Tommen.
Yeah, and she does.
He won't be
Well,
a threat to her." Well, we wouldn't think.
yeah.
Anyway, so those are my top moments from the show. A lot to go through. 19 from that, and then obviously now we got to rank the 10 episodes, and I do think there's a clear last place, even though it's on paper sounds great because it's episode 4 called Oathkeeper. It's very evocative of greatness, but there's not a ton. I mean, you could argue that's another moment that's like sort of borderline list worthy when Jamie gives the sword to Brienne. I think they have so many other moments that are more notable, that I feel like we kind of get that the peaks of that relationship that this one I think would put you so much below those that I just didn't bother.
It's almost an echo of
Listing
those,
it.
where it like brings up those
Yeah,
feelings
yeah,
again,
right.
but it doesn't actually.
There's moments that have happened in the past and that are going to happen that I would put so much above this that I think kind of detracts from it a little bit. But it's obviously a very important moment for her. She's getting this sword and the armor.
And I would argue for Jamie in that he's
he's actually
deciding to
following through.
Mhm.
Yeah, totally. And that's definitely the peak of this episode. But I think elsewhere it's just a little bit of some lows for the standards of the season, which is obviously I'm very high on. But this is where we have Sansa traveling with Littlefinger to the Eyrie. But they haven't like gotten there, and so we don't have the intrigue of the Eyrie yet. It's just kind of them traveling. Daenerys takes Marine here, but like you said, you felt like that went a little long, where they bring the weapons to the guys, and
Yeah.
Marjorie visiting Tommen for the first time is cool.
Thank goodness.
Sure.
They didn't have the sex scene. The creators wanted that, and the actress for Marjorie said, no, absolutely not. He's a minor. Thank you, though.
Sure, he would. I'm sure he was very thankful for her for standing up for him.
He said he would have been fine with it, but he was too young to consent.
And then this is like John is like getting ready to go to Craster's, but he's not there yet. So you don't have like the payoff there. Plus we have like all the mutineers capturing Bran's party, which is particularly unpleasant. So yeah, worst episode I would say pretty comfortably of this season. But number 9 I have episode 5, which is First of His Name, which I think this one the best stuff here is when John does go. This is where he does go to Craster's Keep and they kill all those guys, which that's pretty great. But other than that, there's not as much standout stuff here. We have the Hound learning about Maren Tran, which I do think is hilarious. But
so that's 2 moments right there.
Yeah, I know. So that's the competition. Like this would have been probably significantly higher than 9th place if it was another season. But just like these moments are pretty low compared to the peaks of the season.
Okay.
And then we have like the Lannisters are kind of preparing for Tommen's wedding, but it hasn't happened yet. Daenerys kind of has her leading is hard realization, I guess, when things aren't. She finds out that those other guys have retaken those other places she's already conquered.
Yeah.
And then Littlefinger marrying Lysa Arryn and Brienne, a lot of Brienne getting annoyed with Podrick. So it's kind of what was going on in that episode. Number 8 is episode 3, Breaker of Chains. Still, I would say, even though it's number 8 here, a strong episode. This is obviously where everybody's grappling with Joffrey's death. And so that means that it gives us the time when your brother's dead scene, which is great.
Iconic.
And then we get obviously Sansa meeting up with Littlefinger on that whole beginning of that whole arc. This is also when Arya and the Hound robbed that father. It's very sad.
Yeah.
This is where Davos comes up with his Iron Bank plot. This is where Oberyn like gets he kind of makes the deal with Tywin, so he joins a small council and becomes a judge. So that's
Hmm.
pretty entertaining. Tyrion's farewell to Podrick and standoff in Marine before she's taken it. I guess so I guess this is probably where Dario Naharis kills that guy. That's pretty good, but it's my number 8.
Okay.
7, I have Two Swords, the first episode. Great start with Tywin forging the swords. And then also the debut of Oberyn, which is great, and Arya getting Needle back, which is great. But it's just some of the other scenes don't quite measure up. We have Daenerys kind of wandering around in the desert again. Like really, she's not wandering; she's traveling to Marine. But it's just God, have we seen enough scenes of her traveling through the desert yet?
I don't hear you complain when Jon Snow is walking through the ice, walking through the snow.
Well, he doesn't really do that a lot, except for in the first couple seasons, like season 2 and 3 is where he does the most of that. And yeah, I mean, honestly, like those are pretty low for his art too, compared to where he is now.
To me, those feel the same to me.
Oh man. Well, obviously, I like Jon Snow a lot more than I like Daenerys, so that's one thing. But also with Jon Snow scene, I think that my lowest point for him actually, while he's wandering around the snow, where he feels the most aimless, is honestly where he's with Ygritte and they're tied up together.
Mm.
But before that, he has a goal in mind. Like when he's with Core and Halfhand, like they have a task at hand. It doesn't work out, but like they have a clear goal. And Daenerys does here too. This one really isn't that bad. But like in season 2, the first like half of that season, they have no goal at all. They're just wandering around in the desert aimlessly.
I guess really my complaint, and maybe I'm thinking more along book lines, but it's just whenever they go into survival mode, I just go like, I get it, you're hot and thirsty. I get it, you're cold.
Right.
You're gonna describe it in a lot of beautiful ways,
Well,
but
even
it does get redundant.
well, unless there's like more stuff in the books that I haven't gotten to yet with Jon Snow, but I really actually really liked a lot of the stuff with him north of the wall in that second book. And I mean, it wasn't like he wasn't like my top POV or anything, but like all the stuff that I thought they did a good job of really building out those characters a lot more. Because that's another difference with John is he's with a lot of people that you don't necessarily care about in the show, but in the book they do a pretty good job of like fleshing those characters out more. Whereas with Daenerys, he's just with these faceless guys basically.
Mm. Yeah, I get that. And I'm not saying everything north of the wall is right. It's just sometimes we have lulls and then we have the good stuff happening. And I'm not saying like lulls in action. I'm absolutely great with just like character work. Um, but character work, it's kind of frozen when all you're thinking about is how cold you are.
Yeah. Tyrion's not getting along with the women in his life in the first episode. I think that's kind of a funny way to put it. Sansa's upset. Shay's upset.
Yeah.
We get John kind of returning to service with the Night's Watch. It's kind of a big deal, really, because he hasn't been with the Night's Watch, or at least certainly hasn't been in Castle Black since season 1. I mean, that's kind of wild
Yeah.
for him to be back. And then, of course, they're planting the seeds for the Purple Wedding, even if you don't know it's Purple Wedding yet. Episode my number 6 on this list. It's shocking to have it in the bottom half, but it is The Mountain and the Viper. I just liked a lot of the stuff above it even more. Like obviously the big thing here is the fight with the mountain. And I think some of the other stuff is a little bit slower in this episode. It does have kind of the beginning of Grey Worm's arc with Missandei, which I actually like that arc a lot too. But it's the early stages of it, obviously. Daenerys fires Jorah. I guess you might like that more than I do.
Sure.
I don't really. That moment doesn't do a whole lot for me. And then, yeah, I mean, what can I say? Like the competition for placement in this season is very high. Number 5, I have episode 2, The Lion and the Rose, which is the Purple Wedding episode. Honestly is kind of a tale of two halves. Like it ends with the dramatic and delicious Purple Wedding, but the first half is definitely a lot worse. You get a lot of Boltons in the first half.
Yeah, who wants that?
Tyrion in like, oh god, that scene where he like breaks up with Shay,
Yeah.
kind of brutal. And then Stannis is burning people, and like Bran, so like Bran's having like wolf dreams. Like honestly, this would be a pretty low episode if it wasn't for the Purple Wedding, which obviously boosts it up quite a bit.
Mhm.
But that's number 5. Number 4, I have The Laws of Gods and Men, which is the one where Tyrion is on trial. So that, like I said, this is really generally considered a very high episode, I think, in Game of Thrones, and I think it's probably if you like looked it up on IMDb, this is probably the highest for this season. I mean, that one on the wall is awfully good, but I think this one is considered even higher. But yeah, I have it here at number 4. Obviously, the main thing is the trial. It's excellent. and brilliantly acted by all involved. But then earlier on is when they have Yara's failed rescue attempt at Theon with Ramsay being his debaucherous self.
Yeah.
And I love that. He's definitely steals the show in that scene. And then we have I don't really care. I'm not like as this scene doesn't do it as much for me, but Stan it's definitely significant where Stannis gets the funding of the Iron Bank. Technically they don't show that, but you get the idea that he was successful thanks to Davos.
Mhm.
And then Daenerys doing some politicking in Marine and Oberyn's first small council meeting. So pretty good stuff there, but mostly it's the trial. Number 3, I have Mockingbird, episode 7. This is it a big
Mhm.
obviously episode named after Littlefinger. You know it's gonna be good. And I think this one is even better than the last one that was named after him, which was The Climb. And I think in this episode, obviously it's kind of like what we talked about earlier. It's like for his character, it's a very important episode, and it definitely confirms. Like at this point, you probably have sort of surmised that he is into Sansa. But this is where it's like cemented, you know.
Mhm.
And so just to have cementing of where that character is going is really great. We've talked a lot about that relationship, so we don't have to get into it again. But you know why I think that's really well done. And what's crazy is that's not even really the peak of this episode because the peak for me is whenever Oberyn has his whole thing with uh Tyrion in the
Oh, that is this
cell.
episode.
So
Okay.
like it's like a 1-2 punch of two of my favorite moments from this season backed up together in this episode. So really great stuff. The other stuff that happens in this episode is like Arya and the Hound kill Roygen Biters. That's pretty satisfying. We kind of getting the ramp up to the battle at the wall. Melisandre breaking her continuity with her necklace. Brienne learning about Arya, so that's exciting for her character. And
Mhm.
inkling of Daenerys' tendency to view large groups of people as her enemy, which I think is important for her character as well. So that's my number 3. Number 2, which is definitely the highest that any of the finales have gotten so far, is the finale, episode 10, The Children, even though it's named after Bran. I still love this episode. It doesn't, I still didn't
I
quite.
think it has lots of levels, that name.
Oh, you could say it's Tywin's children.
Tywin's
Yeah,
children, the
sure.
children of the
I didn't even think about that, but
forest.
that is a good point.
Uh,
But
and then the child that was killed that makes Daenerys lock up her children.
that's true. Very interesting. Yeah, I did not think about that. But this is definitely the best, no question, the best of the season finale so far. Because like we said, normally the ninth episode is the one that goes the hardest, and you will notice that it is the ninth episode that I have not ranked yet. So it
Yes.
still doesn't quite, we still don't quite put it above the ninth episode, but it comes the closest by far of any of the finales to their penultimate episode. Obviously, it culminates with Tyrion killing Tywin and Shay. But it's also the brutal fight between Brienne and the Hound. The John's kind of suicide run at Mance Rayder with the Moot, and then Stannis coming in. His wake for Ygritte is in this episode. And then I didn't put it on the list, but in terms of scenes that just are among the saddest and kind of hard to watch for me is Daenerys locking away those dragons.
Yeah, it is
It
brutal.
is brutal.
I was like squeezing your
Yeah.
leg. Just they really did a great job with the sound
They did.
design.
Yeah, it's all the sound design for sure. And then the only thing that threatens to tarnish this a little bit is we do have a very extended brand sequence where he's getting up there to the 300 Raven. That does go a while. I mean, it's like a solid like 10 minutes with like the whole fight with the children showing up. And God, does that go on a long time. But at least we get the death of Judge and Reed. So uh, that's kind of satisfying in its own way. And not soon enough it was. That's the other was saying. Number 1, though, the Watchers.
Yeah, I knew that was
Still,
coming.
they're continuing their run of episode. I think I've put episode 9 at the top of every list except for I think in season 1. I think in season 1 I might have even said on the podcast that episode 9 was the highest, which of course is the death of Ned Stark. But I'm really debating that versus the second episode because I think the second episode of season 1 is really, really strong. But for
Okay.
season 2, no question, episode 9 is the best. Season 3, no question, episode 9 is the best. And honestly, they're really even as good as some of these other episodes where there was really no question for me that episode 9 of season 4 was the best as well.
Well, that second episode of season 1, the how we ended our first night together. So might be a
Yes,
little bit of sentimentality
could
there.
be. As we talked about,
Not, how romantically it ends with the
right.
death of Lady.
Um, obviously this is them doing their big battles again, which we've talked about. Like they do such a great job of when they do their big battles, which they only do them a few times in the whole show, but like they do such a great job of making sure the viewer understands the tactics going into them, but then also painting both sides in most cases, not all cases, but in the best cases, painting both sides as multifaceted, and even if you don't like both sides, they are essential. Like a loss for either side would be a game changer for the show. They definitely do a good job of like setting stakes like that.
And I think it's important that you like and dislike people on both sides,
Sure.
and you do definitely in this.
Yes, definitely. And I think they also, and this one in particular does a good job of putting kind of like a light on the violence of it all also. But while also leaving room for awesome showcases of heroism and valor amidst like the kind of horrifying look on the violence of it. So I don't think they ever do that as well as they do in this battle. So for that reason, it's my favorite battle of the show, and it is my favorite episode of the season.
And I do think the tactics, I'm not a master tactician,
No.
as much as I've played Fire
Yeah,
Games, and they tell me I am.
yeah.
But I do think they make sense in this battle.
Definitely.
Which they
Well,
maybe don't always going forward.
The wall itself that creates such a great avenue for tactics.
Yeah.
And you don't really have that in any other ones. Like I guess in Blackwater you have obviously the bay. It's like a lot of the battle takes place in the water, which is interesting. But like in future battles, you're basically just kind of in a field, which is generally how most battles, to be fair, would have gone at this time. But
it's less interesting.
Right, yeah. For them to have the wall, like there's so many elements that they do with the wall, like where they're dropping the flaming barrels. Obviously, there's the arrows. There's the scythe that they let loose at one point to cut across against the guys that are climbing. It's really great.
You can see how they use mammoths and the giant.
Right, and then it creates like bottlenecks where they need to come through that gate, and so he has to send Grin down there to hold the gate. And then also just the way that Castle Black is arranged, it is kind of like this big courtyard, and so just like the battles that can go on in there, that's why that sets the stage for them to do that sweeping shot where it's like they can go around the whole courtyard. It's just awesome.
Having wildlings coming from both sides.
Right, that's true. They could get sandwiched, yeah. It's just incredible, and like I said, like for me as a Jon Snow fan, it's just hard to beat Jon Snow in that battle too. So, really great stuff. I love almost all of those. All those episodes are I would say at least solid. Most of them really good. Some of them amazing. Like some of the best episodes I've ever seen in anything.
Yeah.
And then all that is left is a wrap up of the dead characters. So we have updates to the dead characters list. There are 35 dead characters now.
Okay. Real quick final thoughts on your episode ranking there. Reviewing those, we've watched up through halfway through season 8 now, and I kept expecting you to say more like, well, this episode did have that. Oh, this episode did have that. And it just like really wasn't like the stuff that you said, like, oh, I did have that, was just like not that bad. And it made me so sad for like how I feel we are gonna start to go after this.
Yeah, see, I don't know about that. Like I think that I'm still gonna. I don't know how it's gonna compare when I do a direct comparison between season 5 and season 4, for instance, or season 6 and season 4. But I don't think season 4 is gonna be my top.
There are some high highs left, but we are gonna have some lower lows than what I just heard.
That's true. Yeah, I will say season 4 is pretty bereft of lows. That's true.
So that's what I wanted to
comment. But season 5 does not have Bran, so it's got that going for us. So I don't know. We'll see. We will see. Speaking of Bran, we have a new bottom character of the character ranking, and I do not see this changing, maybe ever, because number 35 is Jojen Reed. I think without question the worst character that is dead now. A strong contention for worst character in Game of Thrones, or maybe even I would even say, I don't know if I put him last, but if I was like making a worst character I've ever seen list, he would certainly be in contention, I must say.
I wonder what you would think of that actor's character in I want to say it's the second or third movie in the Chronicles of Narnia series.
No, Jesus. Well,
Where that's the only one I've seen him in where he's like supposed to be unlikable.
oh,
And
really?
he's a kid and he is a little shit.
Hmm.
Um, I wonder if you would dislike him as much as you do Jojen.
I don't know. I mean, obviously I don't hate him anywhere near as much in the Umbrella, no, not Umbrella Academy, the chess show, Queen's Gambit.
Yes.
But he's
Well,
playing
he's an adult
he's
there.
playing a very different character. But in Jojen Reed, like I understand that it's kind of maybe this was a direction thing, but the character is just absolutely lifeless. The acting is lifeless. It's actually painful at times when
And
he
I
is on
do think
screen.
that a big part of that is direction,
Sure,
as we see with Bran going
that's
forward.
true, and I don't like that direction with that character either.
I
But
liked young Bran.
I got it too. But at least we remember that young Bran existed. We have never seen Jojen Reed be anything except for this dull, lifeless husk of a character that actively sucks the joy out of anything that could be happening. We have Bran. Oh my gosh, he could reunite with Jon Snow. He's literally standing right there. No, Bran, we can't do that. We have to go up and do this. We have Bran like learning how to control his powers. He's like, you have to learn how to control your powers because it's very important. Then we have Bran having his dreams. He's like, you're actually dreaming too much, Bran. It's just as you could argue, perhaps Bran gets very contrarian later on in his character arc. Jojen Reed is like all of that, but right now.
Yeah.
And with nothing redeeming about him at all. At least when we have Bran later on and we continue down having visions and stuff, the visions end up being actually, believe it or not, because they have been worthless up to this point, absolutely worthless. Not one vision that he has had so far has been interesting. Eventually, they actually do become interesting, and at times, which that is, at least he has that going for him. But Jojen Reed never produces a single interesting thing, or even thing that I would say is good in the entire arc of his character.
Yeah. Well, and in the show too, like he doesn't get to lean on like being Howland Reed's son, because Howland Reed is like really hyped in the book. We've never met him, but oh my God, I can't wait. He is the coolest motherfucker. And in the show, you really only see him save Ned.
Oh, he's the one that saves him in there?
Yes.
That's cool.
So it's really, that's just another like little edge that he's missing.
Well, he's a new bottom of the list. 34 is another F tier character, but she sounds great compared to him, which is Roz. We've already talked about how I feel about her. At least she has a great send-off scene. She is a part of Chaos's Ladder. She contributes in some small way to the greatness of Chaos's Ladder and Littlefinger. Jojen Reed contributes to nothing, so worse. 33.
Yeah, well, I got the falling star in his eyes, which confirmed a theory,
Don't care about
a book
that
theory for me,
right
or
now.
at least whoever edited that episode also believed my theory.
Okay. 33, Craster, who obviously died in last season. 32, a new arrival, Rast. A shit heel if I ever saw one.
Sure.
But his little rivalry with Ghost is kind of fun and sets up like it's satisfying when Ghost ends up killing him, because it actually goes back all the way to season 1 where you have the no one touches Sam moment where Ghost he's like threatening him with Ghost,
Oh, that's him, huh?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
So like it's kind of cool to like he at least has that. He's like in some ways the character that cares the most about Ghost. Because like he has like this hatred for him. So that's funny. 31, I have Carl Tanner, also a new arrival, which is the leader of the Mutineers. Cartoonishly evil character. Maybe even just as cartoonishly evil as Craster, but at least obviously I have him above Craster. He does at least have a cool fight scene with Jon, so that elevates him.
When he talks to Mira, I think that creeps me out more than anything in the show.
Yeah.
The way he threatens her, it's ish.
Sure. That's good. That's talking to her. 30, I have Viserys, who's been down here in the dumps since season 1, but hey, at least he's like nowhere near the bottom anymore. 29 is Stone Snake from the books. That was one of Corn Halfhand's guys. 28 is Garrett from the book. 27, Jory Cassell, mostly from the book.
Oh, and we'll remind listeners that this is whichever they're higher in, the book or the show. That's where they.
Well, yeah, right. It's really both characters, but those are all the reason where they're there because of where they are in the books, more so than the show. 26, though, new arrival, Lysa Arryn. Not a complex or even particularly interesting character, but I do think her content in season 4 definitely elevates her above some of the rabble that she has below her on the list. Well, obviously, the big reveal that we learn that she was in fact involved in the murder of John Aaron, which is the inciting incident of the show, really, and has been kind of this unwitting pawn in Littlefinger's game all along. And she also has a very satisfying death. So
Yeah, I do think she's interesting in that we should be able to sympathize with her on some level. Like she was a child and she was in love with this boy that was in love with her sister. Her sister got to marry this handsome lord where she had to marry the old man. Then she has a like miscarriages and can only have one child, and she like really is overprotective of that child. And it's when that child is threatened to be taken away to be fostered somewhere else that's what sets her off to go along with Littlefinger's plan to
interesting.
murder John Aaron. And then she's so protective of him that she, holds up in the Eyrie and does it like this impenetrable fortress that she still won't part with any forces to help her family, like, which isn't very sympathetic, but there's something there. We should be able to feel something for her. And yet, the way that the actress portrays her, she's just so unlikable. And
Yeah.
it's so icky to watch her interact with Robin. And it's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting to her relationship with Littlefinger is interesting in that it actually creates it to where you're pulling for Littlefinger in that moment. You know what I mean? Like this,
Yeah.
and especially when he's just done one of the worst things that he's done up to this point. Like you could argue, obviously, holding the knife to Ned's probably maybe the thing that it pisses off people the most. But
Sure.
like he's fresh, literally fresh off in the last scene doing something that you hated, and then here you are pulling for him because like she's even so much more hateable.
Yeah.
Because at least he's cool and suave, you know.
Well, and he did just save Sansa. Like after
Right. That's true. Yeah,
being gross.
right. But anyway, yeah, he's just such an amazing character. My appreciation for him continues to grow. 25, also a new character, is Locke. Also not a deep character, and you could argue I could see like some of the stuff that you said there, putting Lysa Arryn above him. But I do think that guy that plays him with like kind of he really does a good job of feeling like somebody that has been under the wing of Roose Bolton, where he like has this underlying like malice to him. Now, he definitely doesn't keep it under wraps as good as Roose Bolton does, but he does like whenever he goes into the North, keep it under wraps. Like with John, he does a good job. Like he's like John even kind of likes him at a certain point, you know. And it's also kind of interesting how John actually never knows that he betrays him because like they find him, his neck has been snapped, and they're like, oh, that's tragic.
Yeah,
But,
that is interesting.
you know what I mean? But I just think that mostly I guess it's kind of the acting of that character that I think is well done. And like the scene that he has with Jamie in season 3, where before he cuts off his hand, you know, where it seems like he's building rapport with him, and then it turns out he's not. But I think that's like that good scene too. So because of that, like he's not nothing. He doesn't really do anything that's like list worthy, except for I guess I do have the overall battle at Craster's Keep, which he is a part of on there. But I just think that he's a solid character, solid, you know, D tier character.
Yeah. Good enough.
Yeah. 24 is Kaholo from the book. 23 is a new character. Pip.
Oh, Pip.
Other than perhaps saying definitely I would say the biggest sweetheart and kind of peace stuff of Jon Snow's group. He doesn't go on any of the battles. We never really see him hurt anybody or anything like that.
Is he a steward?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. But as a result of that, because he doesn't get as much, you don't get as much time with him because he doesn't go on any of like the trips with Jon Snow. And so I think that kind of puts him for me at the bottom of Snow's little group.
Yeah,
but still a great character.
I would have liked the show to show more of the brothers bonding. I do know the first time I watched, I didn't really keep great track of who.
Well, I do a good job in season 1, but yeah, definitely does take. Well, I guess part of that is just because Jon Snow is not in Castle Black for a couple seasons, so
yeah.
22, Krasnus, the seller of the Unsullied. I really enjoy him. Get a kick out of him, as we talked about last time.
Yeah.
21, Dahlbridge from the book, part of Corin Halfhand's crew. 20,
Okay.
Roderick Cassell. I guess mostly from the book, but he's about the same either one. 19, a new arrival. Honestly, like in some ways, I wanted to not quite put her this high, but she's such a significant character that I felt like putting her any lower, and this would be a disservice. But number 19, I have Shay.
Oh, Shay.
I like another character that we're going to talk about in a minute. She's I think Shay is more important for what she means to Tyrion than for her actual strength as a character, right?
Definitely.
And
And I think that's true both in the show and the books. The show definitely tried to flesh her out more.
yeah, I do like, I think, show Shay better so far from what I've seen so far than Book Shay, because Book Shay, she seems very one note. Whereas
Yeah.
like Shoshay, she actually has this relationship with Sansa because she's her handmaiden, and I think that stuff, like her protectiveness of her, is good.
Mhm. Well, I don't think that Tyrion really cares to get to know her in the books, and that's who we see her through.
Mm.
I think that he wants her to be what he's paying her to be. And you know, she wants the money and the
Mhm.
dresses and all of that. And they tried to make her a lot more sympathetic and actually have real feelings for her in the for him in
Definitely,
the show.
definitely, and I think that's better. I think
I just don't like her.
right, like I think she suffers on rewatches because you know where her arc is going. But I have to admit, like when I looked at it through the lens of my first time watching the show, I actually liked her a lot. And I remember even
Really?
thinking, and I know that you were surprised by this, and you did a good job not spoiling it. But I said at one point that her and Tyrion's relationship was my favorite one. Now this was kind of Sam and Gilly hadn't really taken off yet. This is like season 2, but
I do remember that
yeah,
now.
like I was like, so I was surprised. I was a big twist for me when she turned on him the first time,
Mhm.
and so like
And
now,
how much culpability she has in that is questionable.
oh yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. She's like obviously been like because he shattered her heart and everything, and so
but not
she
even that, like Tyrion tells Pod, like, you should have just gone with it. Now you're in danger.
right. Yes, she probably was in danger. Yes, that's true.
But
Um, but she it seems like she felt very vindicated because of what he said to her. But he didn't.
yes.
Obviously, we know that he did not mean what he said to her. He just needed her to leave.
Yeah.
For her safety, for her own safety.
Which he didn't.
Right, which she didn't. Um, and so yeah, those feelings are dimmed over subsequent rewatches, and it's been a long time since I felt those things. But if I can look back through it through the lens of the first time that I saw that, I was like, wow, I was really surprised by that. That's part of what contributed to that scene being so impactful with him on trial. So
Yeah, and I guess that's less surprising if she is just doing her job.
right,
Um,
okay.
oh, I keep
Number 18, I have Khal Drogo, specifically Show Drogo, because Book Drogo would be, I think, significantly lower.
Oh, I remembered what I was gonna say. Sorry. She definitely shines the most, I think, in her scenes with Sansa.
Well, I said,
It's nice to see some woman in Sansa's life in King's Landing be protective of her and care for her, and especially like when she tries to help her get rid of the sheets and
yeah,
anyway, okay. Khal Drogo.
yeah, end of the show. Book Drogo would be lower.
Mhm.
But Show Drogo, and I think it's not necessarily that he's a very different character in either medium, but he's just because of that, you just get a lot more of like the charisma of that actor in the show.
Mhm.
That he just, you don't really get that in the book. So I like him better in the show. 17 is Lord Commander Mormont. 16, a new arrival, is Gren.
Gren.
Something of it. I feel like Gren is like kind of like he's sort of like the emotional core of maybe not emotional, maybe that's the right word, but like kind of like as a character, he's kind of like at the center of Jon Snow's group because he's like not as he's like a grim character, but he's not as grim as Ed. He's like a nice character, but he's not as nice as Pip and Sam.
Yeah.
He's tough character, but he's not as tough as John,
Mhm.
And so like he's just kind of like this middle guy. And I think obviously all that culminates though whenever he has like this big heroic thing where he stands against the giant in the tunnel, and it's tragic in the sense that like if they had followed Jon Snow's advice, he wouldn't have had to die there because they would have sealed the tunnel. And then also it's tragic that Snow had to be the one to send him down there.
Yes, absolutely.
And he does not hesitate at all. Gren is like, I'm on it. Man.
And he does it.
So for all those reasons, really great stuff. But like he really comes into his own in season 4 for sure. 15, Syrio, still up there from season 1. 14, Corin Halfhand. That is definitely book Halfhand. Like show would be way lower.
Yeah.
Way lower. But I really like book Halfhand a lot.
Yeah.
And so I have him at number 14. 13, a new arrival. I don't know. Maybe I'll catch some heat from you for this one. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
13 is Egret.
I knew she was gonna be.
13's pretty good. Almost top 10.
Yeah, I knew that you didn't like her as much as a lot of people do.
Well, I think she's a solid character, but I think she falls a little bit, obviously better, but falls a little bit into the Shay mold where her importance is more in what she means to Jon Snow than I think her strength as a character. She definitely has more personality and stuff than Shay, and it has more
Absolutely.
cool stuff that she does than Shay, obviously. So she's definitely better, but I think she leans a little, maybe a little too much on her little catchphrase with nothing Jon Snow, and I think she's sort of representative of Jon's pull toward the wildlings, which is good, but it's again kind of more representative of like a broader concept. But
she humanizes the wild.
Yeah, I think she honestly, I think she in the show at least, I think she becomes a little bit more interesting actually after they break up, where she has the scene where she injures him but doesn't kill him. She has the scene where they're sacking Molestown and she comes across Gilly and she tells her to be quiet.
Yeah.
And just leaves her back there. She's obviously like very upset and it's like she's sharpening the arrows and she's like, none of you touch him, he's mine, and all that stuff. Like all that stuff I think is kind of more interesting than when they're actually together.
Yeah, and like thinking about what her motivation really is, how much she wants to protect him, how much she really does want to kill him.
I think she's torn on those fronts.
Absolutely, and that's interesting.
And then obviously her death is maybe her greatest moment. It's just a very effective scene.
Yeah.
And certainly one of the show's great tragedies. And then, of course, her wake I love because it really cemented Jon Snow for me. So anyway, great character, just not quite as high as some of the others. 12, really debated her with number 12 a lot. And it's definitely the show version of this character. The book version, Egret would be higher. But 12, I actually still have Yoren up there. I really like, we don't have to get too deep into him because he's not a newly dead character. But I just really like they do a good job of building him up throughout season 1. Like he's there for a lot of surprisingly big moments. He's there while Tyrion is at the wall. He's there with Ned whenever he's dealing with all his stuff in King's Landing, and then he ends up being like this kind of interesting figure for Arya at the end, where he actually gives her the idea of the list. So for all those reasons, I have him up there. 11, another one that I might be controversial for you to have her above Egret, but 11, I have Talisa Stark.
Oh,
I really like her a lot, as we've talked about before. So, and obviously a completely different character than the book character, so she'll just be a different entry, I guess.
For me, she doesn't have quite enough depth.
Yeah, I hear you. She's not a character with a lot of flaws, but I was really surprised by how much I really like that. Well, I think I give her a little bit of credit because even though she has nothing to do with it, she's the person Catelyn is talking to for that awesome scene where she's talking about Jon Snow. But also, I really do like the scene where she's talking, where like Rob. It's the scene where Rob like says, yeah, I'm gonna go for it with her. But it's like where she tells that story of like her brother drowning or whatever, and then like that. I really like that idea. She doesn't really save him. It's this traveler. Or no, it's not a traveler, it's a slave that saves him.
Oh yeah.
But it's like somebody that obviously knows about like how to revive somebody when they've been drowned or whatever. And it reminds me a little bit of something that we get into with Octopath Traveler with the character of Alfin, who's the apothecary, where something kind of similar happens to him, except for it's him that's sick. And then this traveling apothecary comes to him and saves him, and then that like impacts him so deeply. Whereas like he wants to devote his life to doing that for other people, and so I think that's really cool. I really like that kind of like. I think the sort of trope of like a healer in this time when there is no real healing. I really like those kinds of characters. Arden from Final Fantasy 15 is another good example of this, where before he has his villainous arc, obviously he's a healer in that, and to his people.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite healer is in Stormlight Archive.
Oh.
in the books.
Well, maybe I'll feel similar.
Really interesting dynamics. Yeah, my thing with her really is like, can you name a flaw?
No, and I agree with you on that. Like she definitely is a pretty flawless character, but I think
backfired because they did that because they wanted us to like her so much that it hurt even more when she died.
That's true, and I don't feel as much when she dies as maybe I should, but I think they did a good job of making her a likable character and a character that you can kind of believe that Rob would fall for. And I think she's important for sort of bringing to light some of Rob's flaws, which is arguably more important.
Okay, I hear that argument.
Because he's obviously a much more important character. But anyway, I really like her dynamic with him, and I really like those two specific scenes in particular. So, number 10, I have Renly. Obviously, a great character, still hanging on to a spot at the top 10. I think I like book Renly a little bit more than show Renly, but
Yeah.
9,
I'm
I
a big
have
fan of book release.
9, a new arrival, Joffrey Baratheon.
Oh.
One of the major, I would say, one of the major foils of the first half of the show. Like he is like, in some ways, the big bad for certainly for some people. He is like, I think he's like top of Arya's list. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
obviously he's the one that essentially kills Ned Stark. So, you
The
know,
bane of Sansa's existence.
totally, yeah. So like, he's like kind of like the big bad in some ways, and I think he might be on the throne longer than any. I mean, no spoilers really, but I don't know if anybody actually has a longer reign than him. And show wise,
Yeah, I don't know.
he's on there for like a long time.
Mhm.
And so you kind of just get used to him on the throne, which is kind of interesting. His over the top antics are entertaining at times. I do think. I know that you kind of attribute some depth to him in terms of his upbringing and how that has affected him, but I think compared to some of the show's true greats, I don't know that he's quite as deep as some of those. Like he's not like a top tier villain, I wouldn't say for in the grand scheme of Game of Thrones or just villainy in general. But he
You
is.
think he's a top tier villain in Game of Thrones?
I don't.
Okay.
But I think that he is a top tier contender for most hated character in all of Game of Thrones, and he certainly does a lot to earn that title, and is entertaining foil for while he's there.
Okay.
Number 8 is I think my hottest take out of anything.
Because they're too high or too low?
Well, it's just a character. Like if you just watch the show, you'd be like, who the fuck is that?
Okay.
Number 8 is Courtney Penrose.
Oh yeah.
I thought about putting Joffrey above him, but I was like, if I'm being honest with myself, I like Courtney Penrose more than Joffrey. So I'm keeping him at number 8.
Okay.
7, I have Maester Crescent, also from the book.
Well, yeah. I know you love him.
So yeah, obviously, those are those.
In fact, he's a little lower than I would think.
Yeah, I know. Hot takes there. 6 though, Maester Lewin.
Hmm.
I mean, they're both great, but I would probably even say I like show Maester Lewin more than book Maester Lewin.
I can't hear his name without going, like just a sad, loving sigh.
This is pretty crazy. Pretty low for us to only be halfway through the show. Number 5, I have Robb Stark.
Wow.
Obviously, love him a lot, but they're
Yeah, I mean, he was like maybe your top 2 while he was
alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for my first watch through.
Mhm.
Yeah, and he's great, but yeah, and as I have gotten more into it, like there's deeper characters than Robb Stark, realistically. So, number 4, and I don't think I would have put him above Rob on my first watch through, but at this point, I'm pretty comfortable putting Oberyn Martell number 4 above Robb Stark.
Okay. Now we are rewatching The Last of Us in preparation for the new season.
That's true, and I am high on Pedro Pascal right now, but
Definitely.
I don't think that is really playing too deep into this. I think it's more like going through season 4 and really analyzing it and seeing how much of an imprint he leaves on season 4 and how great season 4 is because of him. Like he is a huge part of what makes season 4 great.
Yeah. He's a delight.
Yeah, absolutely delight. And he's, like I said, kind of steals the show in almost every scene he's in, from his chaotic debut and in the first episode. We're not really sure how you feel about him, but he's badass, and a man to be feared as well. And then with that climactic clash with the Mountain in episode 8, at the end, he's only there for 8 episodes. He leaves in almost, not in the grand scope of the show, but in the grand scope of this season, he leaves an almost Ned Stark-esque impact on just everything that's going on, particularly in King's Landing. And he does it with one less episode than Sean Bean as Ned got. And then I do think that it is interesting that this is definitely, I think this is the role that kind of like made Pedro Pascal like a made man in Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
So that, and I think in that sense we do kind of owe a lot to Oberyn Martell, because he's been in a lot of great stuff since then, like The Last of Us and Mandalorian as well.
Yeah.
Another great show.
Well, that's not my favorite. But in terms of Oberyn, I also think he's very interesting when it comes to masculinity, because
Sure.
he definitely, like he wears almost a dress, and
Sure.
he, is bisexual.
Mhm.
But he's very confident in his masculinity, even though he's like writing poetry and
Right.
is kind of has a lot of little flourishes, and I don't know, it's just really, really attractive.
Okay. Yeah. He's really great. I feel very strongly about him at number 4, but number 3, I couldn't quite put him at number 3. Is Catelyn Stark still? And it's hard to say. Like, I don't think if it was just show Catelyn that I would have her above Oberyn. And obviously, I didn't have her above. I would have never considered putting her above Robb Stark, like in my first watch of the show. But I think it's mostly the books. of Catelyn Stark really deepens that character a lot.
Sure. Well, she was your favorite POV for the
The
second
second book, and for the first book, she wasn't quite, but she was close.
Mhm.
Actually, I think Davos might have just beat her out in book 2, but
I know we did in book 3.
well, I haven't finished book 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. So book 2. I could have sworn she was number 1 at some point, but
No, it's Sansa's number 1 in book 1, and then she was number 2,
that's it.
and then it's Davos number 1 in book 2, and she's number 2 again.
Yes, and then
So,
the drop
so
off
obviously
moment.
it's always a top contender for. I'm always excited whenever it's a Catelyn chapter for sure.
That's right.
Okay, so she's number 3, number 2, and obviously, I will say like while I really like Book Catelyn a lot, she also has a lot of show exclusive shows that are among my favorites as well. Particularly that one with Jon Snow, but like the thing with Cersei in season 1, I really like a lot. Episode 2, where they're
Oh, yeah.
like over Bran's bed. So okay, so she's my number 3. Number 2 that I have really loved her. She was obviously number 2 where we were last time, but I do have a new character above her, and that is number 2, Tywin Lannister.
Oh.
One now, if I say Joffrey's not a top tier villain, I think Tywin is one of the all-time great villains in like any medium. He's behind, really, if you look at it, some of the most monstrous deeds in the entire show, really, like the Red Wedding. Obviously, he kind of set that in motion. You kind of have to attribute all that, as Oberyn does, all the barbarities of the Mountain to him. He verbally abuses all of his children, particularly Tyrion, and sometimes really brutal fashion, which ultimately is his fatal flaw that gets him killed.
Mhm.
And it's one of the most humiliating deaths of the show as well for such a proud character.
Yes,
But
that's
at,
very interesting.
but at the same time, he is such a proud character, and he's like regal, and he's obviously brilliantly portrayed by Charles Dance. I just think he is an unbelievable actor. And you just can't help, even despite all of the very villainous things he does, you can't help but like respect him, you know? Like he has this
Mhm.
respectability about him. Like he's a brutal character, but other than I think with his family and particularly um Tyrion, that's the only time that you see like his really cruel side. Like when um I think other than that, he's just a very callous character. Like when Arya he comes into it's season 2 and he comes into the Harrenhal and like there's all those prisoners there and he's like, why are these people just bunched up like this? He's like, we could use them in some way, and like he puts Gendry to work, and then he brings Arya to be his cupbearer, and like he obviously sees right through her disguise, and he's like, why are you dressed like a boy? And she says, safer to travel, my lord. And he says, smart. Like he
Mhm.
respects that.
Yeah.
And so he's just a very deep character. There's
Yeah.
a lot of layers to him.
And there's even more in the books. You don't know anything about his backstory in the show. Kind of like what anything about his parents or how he got to be the way he is. But you do touch on his hypocrisy in the show with Shay at the end.
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
that is interesting.
and yeah, that's an interesting wrinkle that I'm excited for you to see more layers of in the books.
So he is my number 2. He's going to rank very highly no matter what. He's kind of a lock in the upper tier of the list for sure. But I still have him at number 2, number 1, Ned Stark. And I think again, I don't think if it was just Book Ned, I don't think it would be number 1. But show Ned, obviously, like the performance of Sean Bean is so important. And then I think another thing about Ned that I've really come to appreciate in this watch through is just he's there for such a short time, but the importance of that character looms large forever. It never stops. That his impact on like the
Mhm.
characters never diminishes at all. Like
And that's awesome.
right, like Oberyn Martell is a good comparison because he's there for a similar amount of time in the show. Oberyn Martell makes a huge impact on season 4, but once he is dead, it is over. Like I guess he has continues to have an impact on the actions of Ilaria Sand, but
Yeah, that's not a great example.
right, but like, well, there's a lot of like we are not crazy about the
I
lows
know.
of the sand snakes, but
Yeah.
but like with Ned, man, like they never stop thinking about him, all of his children,
Mhm.
and the North as well. You have some stuff now that we're gonna get into with the next season with the Boltons to control, and like the people never stop thinking about Ned and like the
Mhm.
loyalty that they have for him and his family. And that is like very interesting. And then of course we get into like flashbacks later on where he kind of becomes to be very important again. And it just never stops how important that he is. And so
Mhm.
for all of those reasons, he's a lock at number 1, and I think he's going to be there for quite some time.
Well, and a difference between Ned and Tywin's lasting influence is people continue to talk about Tywin as in like, oh, things would be different if Tywin was still here. But he doesn't continue to motivate people in the
No.
way that Ned continues to motivate
That is a good
people.
point. Yeah. Like he's obviously in the show for much longer, and he seems like a much more important character while he's alive. But when he's dead, there is no comparison. There's no question that Ned Stark's influence lasts way past Tywin's, and I think he would be really sick to hear that. Like, because that is like his number one goal is like he wants to have his name, the family name, continue for generations. And once he's dead, it's like, yeah, they might say, man, I wish he was here because he'd really be laying down the law on these freaks. But it's not because like they miss him.
Yeah. And it doesn't change how they're not still fighting for what he believed in.
Right. They're back. They're immediately on to
Their own
better themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like what their own individual goals are. So
Mhm.
yeah, great characters, but that's why I think for that reason it's the lasting influence of Ned. And of course, just the performance and how great he is while he's there.
And I mean, I think that's part of the message with both of them is like you see the flaw. It highlights the flaws of Tywin's leadership style, even though it, got stuff done.
Right. He makes a lot less mistakes while he's alive. But then you realize that in terms of preserving his influence, he actually made a lot of mistakes, a lot more mistakes than Ned even.
And so Ned, it's so tragic and so unfair, but it adds a little bit of justice to it that everyone is still rallying for him and has so much respect for him and continue to fight for his family and his cause.
Yeah, and I think like it's even like his enemies. Like he leaves a lasting impact on them. I think like we don't want to spoil the context here, but there's a scene later on with Cersei where she's somebody like is affiliated with Ned. Well, I'll just say it's one of his descendants, and she says, "Well, I trust the true nature, I guess, the honesty of Ned Stark's offspring." You know what I mean? Like so, like even like his enemies were impacted by him. So anyway, he's the best. So that's it for Game of Thrones season 4. We should be back next week to talk about season 5. And like Reagan mentioned earlier, we're actually finishing our watch through. We should be finishing our watch through of this series on Monday night with my brother. So we should be good to go to report back on all of our thoughts for each of the remaining 4 seasons. And then I think we'll come back for wrap up episodes where we really do big discussion with like maybe we have a best character episode, we have a best moment episode, a best. Honestly, just ranking all the episode because that would be way too much to put all in one episode when the lists get really long. So,
although I think we might need to take a break because Last of Us season 2 is about to come out, and surely we'll have a lot to say about that.
We could do that. Well, the thing about that though is they're only going to be rolling out on an episodic like one episode per week.
Well, so we probably at least want to talk about season 1, right? And then
do you want to?
I mean, I've got a lot to say.
Interesting. Well, we could do that.
That show.
Yeah, we're rewatching that right now too.
Up.
Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant. Let us know if you're interested in us talking about The Last of Us. It is more tied to video games than
that is true.
The origin of the channel.
That's true. That is true. But regardless, for now, if you enjoyed the show, you want to hear more from us, you can subscribe, follow, like, review wherever you listen to your podcast. They are still showing up on like Apple Podcasts and stuff, right? Is that where you get the notifications?
I think so. I definitely notice the YouTube notifications more. My Apple Podcast notifications kind of get lumped together.
Yeah, I mean, where I use the Spotify interface, so it's through Spotify where I upload everything, and that's I am on Spotify. I'm not on Apple Podcasts. I don't have iPhone, so they go on Spotify. It's kind of my primary podcast feed, and then obviously YouTube. But anyway, they're supposed to go out to a lot of different other places too, wherever you listen to your podcast. But regardless, remember you can write into the show for any reason and have your comments read on the air at controlledburnes with an es@gmail.com. But for now and until next time, keep it warm.
Keep it warm.